Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keeping You Company, the podcast where Rukamania and I indulge in topics that we find interesting to keep transatlantic relations as strong as possible and learn new things about each other and the world that we live in, and also to keep you company along the way. Hello, Rook. How are you?
Hello, Scott Sword. I'm very tired. We were talking before this episode that we're both feeling kind of exhausted at the moment, so uh, this will be a chill episode for all of you, hoping to keep you company without getting too frantic in this episode.
Oh, I have to see. Oh, and it looks like my background footage is lagging. Nice. Oh, well, we'll just keep running. Hopefully, it'll sort itself
We'll
out.
just, yeah, we'll just let it all process in its own time, and hopefully the recording will survive.
Absolutely. We should probably go into it. We're probably tired for different reasons, I think. What's going on with over in a Rook's world?
Oh, I've just been bombarded by work. It's been crazy. And on top of that, I've been working a little bit too hard on the old hunt. I've sort of fallen back on bad habits.
Oh, I
I
just
I've made the latest episode sort of more in the sort of mini translation born vein that I've been trying to avoid for a long time now, but I couldn't help
oh.
myself. I had to talk about in-depth translation stuff.
We talked about that in the last podcast. I thought you'd gone away with that. You'd found a system.
I thought so.
Oh,
You know what my system was? My system was I was so busy I didn't have time to throw it in there. I was just recording as I went. And then I got the crazy idea that I was like, oh, maybe things will settle down at work and I can take all these notes and I can make all these points in the middle of an episode. And then I did that and I got more work than I expected. And I had to go and sort through all these notes and work it all out. And I couldn't I couldn't deal with it. Oh, I just barely got the latest episode out on time today. So I feel like I just sort of scraped past the finish line on that one, so that's good.
oh goodness. I mean,
But
it's episode 30, right? I think.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they've been piling up.
Oh
Two
my
a
god.
week.
Holy
It
moly.
goes faster than I thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just like losing track because at times just because I mean you'll know there's just not enough time in the day to consume everything that you want to consume, and
Yeah.
I sort of I get sort of flashes of the of your progress when I just see the a little bit of footage or the number in the video title. I'm like, what? You're on 30 already? You're on 15? Like it feels like a second ago. What on earth is going on? So yeah, it's just
Yep.
that is quite a pace you're going at. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, two a week adds up. It's just when time flies.
yeah, I mean,
You know?
you're probably not helping yourself by watching all of my stuff. To be honest, that's probably not that's probably working against you.
Well, I mean that's just, I've got a lunch or a dinner break or something, right? So
Okay.
that's easy enough to keep up on.
I've been keeping you occupied with
You've
a
been
lot,
keeping me company.
keeping you company. Yeah, with a lot of Wingspan.
Yeah, yeah, you've had an exciting run.
Oh, it fell off at the end, unfortunately. But it was a lot of games. I mean, it would have been a lot more for you if I recorded them all. But I think it was very sensible not to have recorded them all.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree.
Um,
But yeah, yeah. But I mean, it fell off at the end, but it fell off in like the most exciting way because it was another nail biter, right?
right? Yeah, it wasn't just a complete 40 point washout or something. It was a genuinely sort of close
Mm-hmm.
final game that I had. I mean, it's worked out kind of well actually. That I didn't record them all, or even more than I did, and sort of
Mm-hmm.
postpone uploads and stuff. Because then we've had Wingspan Asia come out,
Mm-hmm.
and actually the day of recording, you probably haven't seen it yet, but I've put up a Wingspan Asia video onto YouTube. Um,
Yeah, I got the notification, but I have not watched the video. So I'm
it's
excited to see what the Asia expansion is like.
Oh, it's wacky, but I love it. I think just,
Nice.
there's not the same big shift that there was with Oceania in terms of the board changing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very tempted. I said in the video, I'm very tempted to if I ever see the Asia expansion in the wild in real life, I will pick
Ooh.
it up because I don't have the Oceania one, but I'm still a bit humming and hawing about it. How I feel about it. There are aspects about it that I like, and there are aspects I don't like. But
Mm-hmm.
because in general the community plays with it, then I'll play with it, and it's still good fun, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the Asia. The Asia expansion is very interesting. There's some interesting sort of co-op stuff. Some more teal powers, which are also interesting, and then there's a few predators, which are sort of push your luck predators, which I think is an interesting take on things. And there's
That's
a
fun.
so yeah, I'm trying to just find just trying to play. I'm just playing a lot of friendly games because they've now announced an Asia tournament, but I probably won't compete just because of other stuff going on. I think it'll be a bit silly to compete and then potentially have to bail out midway through or something. They're just doing lots of friendly games, and then if I get a good recording somewhere where we get lots of Asia birds on the board and lots of fun stuff happening, then I just upload it, just to showcase the expansion a little bit. And also do it on Twitch as well. So there won't be as
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
I'll keep the pace a little bit slower for you, so hopefully
Mhm.
that'll help you out.
Yeah. You are my sole window into the world of Wingspan Online. So,
Ah, oh no, maybe I shouldn't shut that window then for you.
well, it's up to you. I sort of like getting to check in every now and then and not necessarily know all the best strategies or what you're going for and just watch stuff happen on screen and try and figure out the logic for myself.
It's just a
It's kind
nice.
of fun.
It's just the vibe of. I mean, the theme of the game is quite chill, but it gets very cutthroat,
Yes.
especially in 1v1. So actually, what I'm doing now is doing more multiplayer. So the videos are longer,
Hmm.
so there might be sort of a retention issue, but you get to see a sort of more chill vibe about it. And then if we get some people on VC, like we've done on stream, and also then you just get to see some birds getting played that you wouldn't normally, because like pink powers are better when you got more people around the
Hmm.
board. There are some birds where you choose one player to give an additional card to, or a resource or something, and in
Hmm.
1v1 you don't want to play those birds because you're directly helping your only opponent.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're playing in with 3 or 4 players around the table, well, you can selectively choose who you help in a certain moment, and that can then sort of change things a bit.
Hmm.
So it's nice. It's a different vibe, and I'm really getting to know some of the people who play multiplayer. So it's lovely. It's a nice change of pace.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fun. It sounds like the sort of thing that I would enjoy. Except that would mean I would have to go online and play Wingspan.
I mean, you have the game. We got halfway
I
through a
do.
game
I
once.
I do have the that's you see right there. That's the problem. That's the hurdle is but can I make myself sit down and play Wingspan for more than half a game at a time? I don't know.
Well, I don't.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I can do it in person. I don't know what it is about the digital version because it's good. I don't know. It hits different as they say.
It's kind of something we'll talk about later a little bit about media and stuff, but I guess then we could also go into board games and things. But
True.
for me, I'm tired, partly because it's also nighttime for me. But I don't know
Yeah.
what
Mhm.
I was going to ask you because I've been hearing some things. This is where having an international audience on Twitch can kind of help get a gauge of what's happening in the world because I'm tired, partly because of poor sleeping habits, but also just because we've had summer has arrived with a vengeance.
Mm.
It has been
Mhm.
very, very hot,
Mm.
persistently so for pretty much the whole of June. After what was a very wet winter, not a cold winter per se, but a wet
Mhm.
winter and a wet spring. Not complaining that there was so much rain because now the reservoirs are full.
Mhm.
And I actually went up to the Catalan mountains a few days ago, and it was I was driving, so I couldn't exactly see. I could see glimpses of it, um, but the people who I was with, were saying, "Oh wow, these reservoirs are really full, and I haven't seen them this full for X number of years." So that's a good
Good.
sign. Because after
Yeah,
this,
it's also the worst thing about driving. I
right,
like to look at the scenery as I like go from place to place, and when you drive, you can't do that.
yeah, I think I'm gonna have to maybe invest in some sort of dash cam, and then we could use that for
Yeah.
footage on the podcast.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Yeah,
um,
that's how you can justify the expense right there.
Exactly, double whammy, two birds. Well,
That's
also then
right.
for safety purposes, right? Just in case I do end up getting dinged or whatever, I can use
Hmm.
it
You
potentially
got
for
the
insurance
footage.
purposes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's just a shame that I could see glimpses of it. I'm like, oh wow, this is it's an amazing landscape, but I just can't look at it properly because the roads were
Right.
twisty or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
every fall over here, I think I'm gonna get in some sort of accident because I'm always looking at the changing colors of the leaves,
oh,
and some of the trees are just stunning.
hmm.
And it hasn't happened yet, but I swear, one of these years, I'm gonna run right into someone because
Oh,
I was looking at a tree.
that's not gonna look good on
maybe
the insurance claim or whatever.
maybe I'll run into a tree. Oh yeah, the fact that I'm saying this here on this episode, whoever's my adversary in the adversarial process that is fighting about who's at fault, right? They'll dig through the internet archives and be like, "See, he said it himself."
Right. You're building quite a rap sheet for yourself, right? Potential
Yeah,
cause
there's
for
been a
car
lot of
accident. FBI is still looking into you. I mean,
that's right.
you're painting
A
quite a
lot
bad
of
picture.
incriminating stuff I'm putting out about myself on the internet.
Oh, there's my plan all along, a rook.
Yeah, it's all a long sting operation. You're
Absolutely.
letting me
From
letting me
across the
hang
pond.
myself here.
They would
Yeah,
they'd never suspect that a Brit would be behind the operation.
that's right.
Uh,
Working out of Spain.
oh, yeah, out of Spain as well. Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
very international setup we've got
that's
going on
right.
here. We've been tracking you for years, a rook.
That's right. I recently, so I've told you I've been watching like some British TV shows with my dad.
Hmm.
We recently watched a show. It was called The Night Manager, and
Oh,
it's
right.
about
Yeah.
this guy who like works in hospitality at this hotel, and he ends up getting like recruited into um the MI5 or whatever, something, the intelligence service.
Yeah, maybe
And
MI5, MI6, one of the two. Whichever one
right,
of those two it is, yeah.
yeah, and so he goes into the intelligence service, and he has to like establish this international cover, and they're always like hopping around the world. So it's like you're like this version of the guy, and I'm the version of Richard Roper, the like main villain in the show of this international, you know, not drug dealing, gun dealing organization where you're tracking me down through the podcast, building trust only to eventually betray me.
Absolutely. But now I've been foiled, so yeah, expect the authorities to be on your doorstep momentarily. We'll
Yep.
capture the arrest on the podcast.
Well, you gotta wait. You gotta wait till I get into a car accident in the fall,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
in the autumn, as you say.
Yes, in the autumn.
That was yeah. That was I was going through your community server, which you too, listener, can be a part of if you're not already. Um,
We'll leave
and
links
join
up
in on
below.
these. Yeah, join in on these conversations about language. We were talking about how someone was like, "I've never heard an American say autumn," and it's so funny because Snuffleupagus, who's also on the server and is also part of the Fury of Dracula community, was saying, like, what is this comedian talking about? We say autumn, we just don't say it as often as fall. And that's the same impression that I have. But the funny thing is, to the international audience on that server, it's like, no, they always say fall.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it's just a matter of like fall is the like standard term.
Right.
And so when you want to sound poetic or fancy, that's when you'll pull out autumn. And
Mm.
so while it's not unheard of and people don't know, like, it's not like nobody knows what that word means over here. It's just, I don't think it would necessarily strike people as odd if you said it. It's just that it's not the word that we reach to most often.
Is it the same as the whole? I can't remember if we spoke about this or this came up in a different conversation. But is it the same with the whole pants trousers argument?
I think it's a little bit different in the sense that, because I think we did talk about this, and I think that if you say trousers in the States, like people will know what you're talking about, but they'll think it's a little bit weird. I think
Mm.
that fall or autumn rather, is even less standout, right? It doesn't strike people as that strange as trousers would, as opposed to pants.
Right.
But yeah,
Was
um,
whereas I'd feel the complete opposite. If you use the word pants to me, then I'd find it. I mean, again, because I'm now becoming more exposed to the word, especially talking to more Americans and also talking to more non, well, English as a second language speakers who
mm,
might have learned the word through American media or whatever, and then they use it. So my brain is
yep,
starting to become a little bit more numb to the use of the word pants, for example, or fall.
yeah,
But it still catches me out sometimes if it's used in a situation I don't quite understand, and my brain's like, whoa, 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 no, 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 it's not that word, it's that word they're trying to say. um, Especially maybe when it's more European says it, because I still have this kind of assumption, which again is could be very wrong, that European speakers of English would side a lot more with the British way
Mhm.
of speaking English. But then again, because American media is so ubiquitous at this point, um,
Mhm.
and a little bit pervasive, right? Then
Yeah, yeah, you never know.
it makes sense that they would pick it up. Whereas if
Hmm.
I met somebody from like Mexico, for example, and if they said the word pants, then that would seem completely normal to me that they would have learned that word and not trousers, um,
Hmm.
just because of proximity to the US and stuff. Um, so yeah, there's a whole treasure trove of stuff in there, and it's something that we want to try. I need to try and go through some more of it, and we can have a more sort of in depth podcast about uh, language differences between America and the
Yeah,
US, and um,
yeah, we have not by any means exhausted that topic, so
absolutely
it'd be
not,
fun to revisit. Yeah, you do
absolutely
have
not.
me thinking of when I taught English in Japan. They had these like standard issue materials that they would send to everybody, and they frequently changed them. But for 1 year, there was this one song, and I don't know how they came up with it, but it just struck me as completely ridiculous. And to be fair, it was aimed at elementary schoolers, so I think it was a little bit supposed to be silly. But the whole thing was all about like orange pants. Do you have orange pants? No, I don't have orange pants. I have red pants. I have yellow pants. I have blue pants. And I'm just like, okay, like I that doesn't even make sense. Why would you have that many colors of pants?
You are
Like even in the
you're one shade. You're well, not even shade. You are a one color pants guy.
That's me.
That's
But
you.
I don't understand why like even if you're a multicolor pants guy, do you have orange? Why are you looking for orange pants?
I don't know,
I
like
don't get it.
I assume they're not going to be like fluorescent orange. I assume like I don't know, it's like sort of light orange, almost like chino type trousers, right? That's what they're thinking of?
I don't think so. I mean, it was a kid's textbook. It was just a pair of jeans that was colored orange. So,
Ah, okay, fair enough then.
yeah. But it was pretty funny to me.
I mean, they're teaching them the
I don't think I've
colors.
ever
It's
seen orange pants.
uh, I think I have. Of not often, but I
Hmm.
mean, yeah. But again, like if you were saying like that, I'd be like, well, still, even for the underwear context, right?
Right.
That
Yeah,
that's
it's weird.
that's very bold choices.
Yeah.
Maybe we're the same. I'm a very dull, not dull colors per se, but I don't go for extravagantly bright colors with my clothes.
Mm.
I like blue anyway, so I go for a lot of like blue jeans, often quite dark. A lot of
Hmm.
black metal t-shirts, and maybe some, especially now it's the summer, some lighter colored stuff. But that's it. You're not going to catch me in bright orange stuff anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wear black pants all the time. So that way I can wear whatever shirt I want.
Well,
Well,
that's
not whatever.
true.
I can't wear a black shirt, but
Oh, you could.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I could
You
if I
could.
wanted to go for sort of an all black look, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, channeling like the an Adams Family kind of vibe.
Yeah,
If you
but
just
black's pretty neutral as far as colors go, so I don't have to
yeah,
think about it if I just always wear black pants.
right. You won't catch me with any sort of like rainbow colored stuff or whatever. That's just it's too garish for me. I just wouldn't be able to pull it off with any sort of sincerity.
Yeah,
So
I hear you on that one,
I don't know
which
if
is somewhat funny because I like seeing rainbow colored things.
out in the
I
wild, but not just on me.
yeah,
I think, and maybe not
on
on
me, yeah,
people.
no.
In nature, maybe. I don't know on people. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
depends. Some people can pull it off. I just can't.
Hmm.
I'm one of these people where if I find a pair of jeans or something that I like, I will buy multiple. I was gonna say copies, but
Hmm.
it's not the word. Oh my goodness. I can't even think of the word. My
Pairs.
God. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Good me. God, I'm tired.
Yeah.
My brain is just melting. Yeah, I get multiple pairs. Or if it's a t-shirt that I like, I will buy multiple. Or maybe it's like the
Hmm.
same t-shirt but with a slightly different shade of blue. Yeah, I'll take it. So it must be quite weird for
Yeah,
some
I
people
do.
when they see me, they think, does he never change his clothes? It's like, no, 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 I change them
Yeah.
every day. It's just I have multiple of the same.
Yeah, I do the exact same thing. Actually, when I was younger, my parents were like, "You can't do that. Like, you think people are gonna think you wearing the same clothes every day." And I was like, but I like them. Why should if I found clothes that I like, why wouldn't I just keep using those?
Right?
Just buy a bunch of them, like wear it every day. There was one teacher that I had in college who was just always wearing all black, so you could never tell what like you just. I guess he changed his outfit every day, but his wardrobe must have just been a whole bunch of the same sets of black clothes. And I was like, okay, like as much as I like always wearing black pants, like I'm not going to go that route.
That reminds me of a teacher from my school, one of the more senior teachers at the school, who always wore. I don't know if did he always wear a suit and tie? He definitely wore like a suit, at least without the tie. I think he wore a tie. No, 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 no. He did wear a tie because his ties were quite extravagant. Um,
Okay.
but I never ever saw him without suit trousers and proper sort of like suit shoes and that.
Wow.
Because in the UK, like teachers do dress a little bit smartly, but they don't have to wear suits. And there's that one time I was in the same village where I went to school at the weekend playing tennis or whatever it was I was doing. And then he pops into like the same supermarket that we were in, and he's wearing jeans. I was like, no, 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 this is just wrong. You shouldn't be wearing those clothes. So that's when you say about that
Wow.
teacher. I was expecting like maybe at the weekend, he or she would have gone out in all different like bright colors. You see him
Yeah,
in the wild and go, you should be wearing those clothes. You wear only black, right?
that would be really funny.
uh,
That's not what happened, but that would be really funny. Yeah,
so,
it's like the next level stage of like seeing your teacher outside of school when you're a kid is like its own dramatic shock.
mhm.
But to have that little twist of that's not what you're supposed to be wearing either. Right? That's kind of crazy.
How dare you wear normal people's clothes?
That's right.
Unbelievable.
Not only are you not in the right place, you're not wearing the right thing. What's going on?
Everything's all wrong about the situation. So
Yep.
how hot has it been with you? I mean, because I have heard from some of my American viewers that it has been very hot over there, but then other people said that it hasn't been hot, or it's been cooling down, or they've had thunderstorms, or it's been all over the place. So what's been happening in with you
We had
weather-wise?
like maybe 4 or 5 days in a row that were pretty hot for here, and then other than that, I don't think it's been that bad. I the thing is, I'm a very bad person to be asking this about because I have not been outside in maybe a month, at least for not for any length of time, right?
Mm.
Um, I'm inside. I go to my car, which is air conditioned. I go to the store, which is air conditioned. I come back. My home is air conditioned. So as far as I'm concerned, it's been the weather has been happening, and I've been not very much part of it.
So you could have had hailstorms, you could have had tornadoes ripping through, and you wouldn't know.
As long as they didn't get close enough that I could like hear and feel it from my window, right? I would have no idea.
Ah, when you
There's a
say
tornado the next town over. No, I'd have no clue.
no clue. When you said it's been hot, how hot is hot for June in a Rook's Paddle
Well, Strider told me that it got up to 114 Fahrenheit, which isn't going to help you.
I can. Well, I think the conversion I've now kind of got is like 5/2, right? So it's 40 degrees Celsius is 100 Fahrenheit, give or take, right? It's a little bit below. You had to add a little bit more on. It's like high 30s in Celsius is about 100 Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
So 114,
So
you're looking like probably about 40 then, but that's very hot.
45, from what I just looked up.
What? That's insane. That's not normal, is it?
No, it's not normal.
That's
It's
not
very
normal.
hot.
That is extremely hot. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's been 40 degrees here pretty much
Here's
non-stop for. Well, it's not quite. I'm being a little bit dramatic. That's not quite true. But it's been.
Now here's the thing. Here's the thing you need to understand about the number I just gave you. That's the number Strider gave me. That's not a number I saw in the forecast.
Oh,
And I cannot vouch for the veracity of the information that Strider gives me.
okay. I mean, but it still sounds like a fairly reasonable number, right? We know Strider's chaotic energy. If he was gonna invent it, he would just go, "Oh, it's whatever the equivalent to 60 degrees Fahrenheit would be," right? He'd probably just go
Right.
way above. Oh, I don't know. Oh my god, that is. I mean, I mean, I've heard other people say in the States that it's been high 30s at least,
hmm
which
Let's
is
just say, to
very
be
hot.
safe, let's say it got over 40 degrees Celsius for like 2 to 3 days, uh, in the somewhere in the middle of June around here. So I feel confident that that is a safe statement.
Right. That's kind of I can't remember exactly what the figures were from what people have told me, but that would seem on par with the way that people were talking. But I guess now it's
hmm
dissipated.
Yes. Yeah, it hasn't had the sustain that it sounds like you're having over there in Spain.
Because it feels like the way I understand the climate that you would have would maybe be more similar to the UK. Is this
hmm
are you on par with the UK in terms of I keep getting it wrong. I keep mixing up latitude and longitude. Latitude, right? Oh, wait a minute.
Well, I think the UK is actually further north, if I remember correctly. But the issue is like you've got the Gulf Stream,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like changes the weather patterns.
Hmm.
So I think the UK is like a little bit warmer than it should be if you just look in terms of the latitude.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it works out to being pretty similar in terms of what you might expect from temperatures in different times of the year.
Right. I mean, the fact I always give is Inverness, which is the sort of the biggest city in the Highlands. Oh wait, that's not that statement's completely false. It is the only city in the Highlands of Scotland. It's like it's not even a competition. There's only like 50,000 people. It's not even that big. The only city in the Highlands of Scotland is further north than Moscow.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just the way the Gulf Stream works. It brings so much of the Atlantic, um, warm but humid Atlantic air. When the air comes down from the Arctic, it gets flipping cold. But it's not
Mm-hmm.
sustained, so you don't get the
Mm-hmm.
huge snow deluges like you would get from you'd experience in Russia or wherever like that. But there was a time
Mm-hmm.
actually a few years ago we had a thing called we called it the Beast from the East, um, which was a huge
Ooh.
snowstorm that came across from the east actually, and it just blanketed the UK with a lot of snow. And actually, the street. So in the background footage that we got for the podcast, we got a bus ride through Edinburgh at the moment, and that street that's on the screen right now, there was no traffic going down it. The snow was so thick that no cars could drive down it, and all the businesses had
Wow.
pretty much all the businesses had to shut because they couldn't get deliveries or anything. It was insane. Um,
Wow.
and obviously, at that time, the university shut, so I wasn't at work or whatever, and all the schools were shut. And my flatmate at the time and I were able to walk through basically where the bus is driving right now. We were able to walk up it like it was nothing because there was no traffic. It was insane. It was the
Wow.
craziest time. Um, but that's pretty abnormal. We used to get more snow when I was younger, but now it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's just wet all the time. But I think if I have to look at the map now. I think Spain is more on par with Florida in terms of latitude. I might be getting that wrong.
Hmm.
But here we just got like the dry continental heat, at least where I am, because I'm just slightly off the Mediterranean coast. So on the Mediterranean coast, it's still pretty hot, but not so much. You're looking maybe like low 30s Celsius, but
Mm-hmm.
it's humid. Whereas
Yeah. The humidity is the worst.
it's brutal. But then
It's
most of the interior of Spain is actually kind of like a desert. It's dry continental heat. So it's
hmm,
much hotter, but it's dry mostly.
interesting.
So it depends on what you prefer. I would prefer to have dry heat but with no humidity. But the problem is when you go out in the very peak of the heat in the sort of not even midday. It's like sort of around 3-4 o'clock. It's brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Even just going just for a few minutes walk, you know, um, between where I live and where my parents-in-law live. is just you arrive home just exhausted. But also I'm not built for the heat. I'm I'm still a Scot at heart. I can't deal with the heat very well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just been
Yeah.
brutal after a spring which wasn't that tough. There's a lot of rain, and the
Mm-hmm.
temperatures were normal. We've just been wallowed with the heat, and then they'll say, "Oh, there's a heat wave." But a heat wave in Spain's perspective is it goes from, say, mid 30s, 33, 34, 35 degrees Celsius, up to about 40, and
Mm-hmm.
then when the heat wave disappears, it'll go down from 40, 41, and only drop by about 5 degrees. You
Oh
might notice
man.
a difference, but it's still flipping hot. Whereas in the UK,
Yeah.
there was a time a couple of years ago we were in the UK, and just by coincidence, we were doing this tour around the UK, and it was right in the middle of this huge heat wave that hit England, and England hit for over 40 degrees Celsius, and we are in the epicenter of the heat wave in Birmingham at the time. But the difference was there was only about 2 3 days of the heat wave, and then it instantly dropped by about 15 degrees. So if it was 25, which is still very hot, but you
Mm-hmm.
notice the huge drop in temperature. Whereas in Spain,
Yeah.
people tell me, "Oh, yeah, the heat wave's over." I'm like, "Really? I don't feel it. It's still
Mm-hmm.
really hot." I'm sweating in my office every night when I'm streaming. It's the first thing we do when we enter the car is put the AC on. it's
Mm-hmm.
it's 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 quite oppressive, to be honest. But oh
Yeah.
well.
It's tough. It reminds me of when I was living in Japan, and it's hot and humid there. And boy, I remember I may have told this story before, but I remember like walking outside of a convenience store at one point in Tokyo, which was the convenience stores are all air conditioned. You step outside, and it's just like getting hit in the face with a wet towel.
Yeah.
It's awful. The humidity is so bad, and the heat like doesn't give you any like any escape. It's
Mm.
just terrible. I remember a friend of mine went to go do like interviews, and she had to keep like a separate suit that she could change into at the interview sites because every part of the transit was so hot
Mm.
and gross that she would just be completely covered in sweat by the time she got to whatever building she needed to go to do the interview for.
Right.
So I was just like, wow, that's crazy.
I mean, not to the same extent of a full change of clothes, but I had to do it when I used to go to like afternoon classes to teach. I'd have to do the same thing. I have to take a spare shirt with me because otherwise I just arrive and you can just see the sweat coming through my shirt. All I've done is walk 10 minutes. Okay, albeit with a heavy rucksack on my back, but still, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just enough.
Yep.
I can't even imagine having to go across the city with it. I mean, I probably said the same thing too when I used to fly from Scotland to Spain to visit. Now, Mrs. Scott's Sword. Um, I would be in Edinburgh with a jacket and a jumper or whatever, depending on what season it was, but definitely at least with 2 layers on. And then the minute you get off the plane in Barcelona, again, it's like getting punched in the face with just the
Mm-hmm.
heat. The humidity would not be as extreme as Japan, but just the sheer contrast. You're just not ready for it.
Yeah.
And it's just, oh man, it's. I mean, I can't remember if I said this on the podcast. I told you privately, Rook, but I remember once sunbathing next to the beach in Barcelona in January. It was
Wow.
ridiculous. Slightly extreme, but still, obviously, with the Mediterranean climate, there's not as much difference between the summer and winter temperatures. So you can have not, I mean, for Scottish standards, very hot winter days, whereas in the interior part of Spain, you'll have much, much colder winters. That's kind of interesting when you tell Spanish people about the difference between Scotland and then Spain. They think, oh, Scotland's got to be freezing in the winter. And I'm like, well, not
Mm-hmm.
really. If you go up to the top of one of the mountains or something, there's a famous, I think it's a weather station or just at least a weather site where they do measurements called Altnahara. That one's always the one breaking the low temperature records because it's really
Mm-hmm.
high up and it's Baltic up there. Yeah, if you live up there, sure, it's going to be minus 10, minus 50, minus 20 sometimes, depending on what's happening. But if you live in Edinburgh or even Inverness or even in like northern England, it's not going to get that cold, especially if you're near the sea. Because you've got the Atlantic climate. It might be colder even in the interior of Spain, just because you've got that that dry nature of it. You're not going to get a lot of humidity and rain and stuff. It's then the summer where you notice the difference. There's a big difference between the winter temperatures and the summer temperatures. Two very extremes, and nothing in the middle. Spring and autumn last 2 weeks, and that's it.
Oh, yeah. I was so disappointed when I did my walk of Japan because like fall is my favorite season, and my whole plan was, oh, I'll start in like northern Japan, and sure it'll be July, the end of July, but it'll be cool up in the northernmost part of Japan, and then I'll slowly walk down the country. And as I do, the weather will mellow out, it'll get cooler, and I'll essentially be walking for like a very extended version of fall. And that is not what happened. What happened was I ended up walking for 3 months in a super extended summer.
Yeah, and all
It
it
was
never came.
miserable. Yep.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. That was when I told you they had the like all those like 40 degrees Celsius days in a row, and they started there was the one place that started offering 40 yen ice cream
Oh my
because
goodness.
it was to tie in with the 40 degrees Celsius thing. And I was like, wow, well, I gotta try and find that ice cream shop.
Can you do conversion for me? How much is 40 yen?
Well, back in the day, it changes, right? So now it would be even less. But back in the day, that's equivalent to 40 US cents.
Oh wow, yeah, that's dirt cheap then.
Yeah, they're practically giving it away. It was just, it's 40 Celsius, so we'll charge you 40 cents.
Wow, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've seen some. Or maybe was that something that I shared? Oh, there's an influencer on YouTube, I guess maybe on TikTok too, who's in another American who's in Japan. There seems to be a lot of
Hmm.
people who I just stumble across on for educational YouTube videos or whatever, and it's so many of them just like, oh yeah, I was an English teacher in Japan. Don't know.
The
I,
JET
I
program
just end up
and
finding all these jet program people. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
the
Um,
JET program and the I think there's another one like Interact or something. There are a handful of programs. They're very proactive, and a lot of people. I think Japan has what they call soft power. They've been really trying to focus on it. So like anime and manga culture and stuff is like really booming, and Japan is really trying to put energy behind. Like, and to be fair, I feel like the government initiatives that they've started to try and like focus on this have been a little bit out of touch with reality, but they've been trying to make it happen, right? There's a general will among Japanese people to sort of export their culture as much as they can all around the world. And to a certain extent, that's certainly caught on, especially with like my generation. A lot of people, I feel like, really popularized anime and video games and all these things that come from Japan. And so Japan has this strong appeal in addition to these very strong programs that are all about getting people who are around the college age to come and work and teach English there.
right.
So I think that's sort of like a natural effect that you can see of the people who then go on to like make lots of YouTube videos. You're gonna get, especially if you're into like English educational content. I imagine that's just going to be a natural side effect of that sort of confluence of factors.
Yeah. I mean, surely the popularity must be not even diminishing because the fact that there's even more access now to, especially manga and things. I mean, at least in terms of, I don't know how it works in the States, but at least with European culture, it felt like I never heard of the word manga even 5 years ago. Whereas now it's just sprung up. I mean, anime, yes, but manga, no. It's just now it's popped up everywhere. So there'll be even more people, I'd say, fascinated with. I think maybe South Korea has got a bit of more appeal. I don't know if when
Yes.
you went,
Yes.
if
South
South
Korea
Korea
has
would have been an option too or not.
yeah, it could have been for me. Like I was pretty well focused on Japan by the time I was in college. Like I completely fell in love with anime when I was in high school, and actually even earlier. I fell in love with anime when I was in middle school, and then I got into like the Pokemon trading card game that we were talking about before, and I fell really hard into Pokemon, and it was just like everything I loved was from Japan. So as I grew up, it was like Japan, right? Sort of became the only option for me,
Right.
and but I think if I had wanted to, I could have gone to Korea. And I think Korea in particular has been slowly building its own sort of cultural influence.
Hmm.
And I think that's great, right? Like I don't, I'm not some like Japan culture is the best sort of person. I think it's really cool that Korean culture is taken off the way that it has. When I was living in Japan, actually, there was a huge boom in K-pop, which sort of preceded what then became the then American and worldwide boom in K-pop and Korean dramas and all these sorts of Korean forms of entertainment. So, yeah, it was super interesting to experience. And the funny thing was, like, I was living in Japan during this like big K-pop boom, and then I moved back, and I flew back a few years later to visit, and I was talking with someone who I managed to reconnect with, who I'd met while I was walking Japan, and I was like, oh, and like, what's going on with K-pop? And he was like, oh, all those places shut down.
Oh no.
I was like, what? It was like, yeah,
bubble
it was
burst.
like it turned into be, yeah, like it was this big bubble and then it eventually burst. And I was like, oh, well, that's disappointing. But maybe it's come back again. I don't know.
'Cause I definitely feel like, especially again, I don't really know so much about the UK, but I found it kind of interesting talking to people here, young people over here, because especially because they've got so much English media to consume. You've then got the influence of music from Latin America, like
Mm-hmm.
reggaeton and all this, which is it's exceedingly popular. And that's something I didn't know about before coming here, because obviously all the lyrics and stuff are in Spanish, so I would never, it wouldn't be very marketable in the UK. But then I still talk to young people here, and they still say, "Oh yeah, I like K-pop. I like this band from Korea." I'm like, "How the hell do you?" It's just crazy how, especially with the internet and stuff, you can find anything. But it's fascinating to me that there'd be people in Spain, which is just so complete, just so different from Korean culture, but then they would still be listening to. Well, I mean, I guess now with series like Squid Game, that's just gonna boost
Mm-hmm.
the interest in South Korea. And then just funny, we're talking about it in Jet Lag, the ongoing series.
Yes.
Jet Lag is in South Korea as well.
Oh, cool.
They're playing Snake
Ooh.
in South Korea. So um, it's yeah, it's fascinating that way. But I don't think the cultural pull of Japan is going to diminish, right? Because it's got that sort of mystique, sort of nature to it still, even with the year of globalization and things. It's just still so different from.
So far, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I've sort of been waiting because part of me feels like, sort of like that, K-pop fad bubble rising and then bursting in Japan. I imagine the Japan culture bubble is going to rise and then burst around the world, and it's only a matter of time. But I've been wrong about it so far, so that's fine. Quite frankly, it's good that I've been wrong because that's how I make a living. So
Hmm.
I want people to keep buying Japanese video games that I translate.
Absolutely. Aye. Well, since we have a little bit of a time limit for today's
Mhm.
episode, just because I've got very early stuff to do tomorrow morning, and I do need to get my Zeds, we could probably move on to our main topic for a little bit. Um,
Let's do it.
I'll hand it over to you, Aruk, because Aruk's been very good, by the way. But especially for the last few episodes, I've been very sort of absent-minded, podcast-wise. And Aruk's been the one who's been like, well, we could talk about this and this and this and this and this. I'm like, cool. So, what do you have in mind? Reveal to the
Well,
listeners.
I was looking at a list we came up with, and to give Scott Sword his own credit, this list that we concocted, I think 80% of it came from Scott Sword, and I like, we had a whole bunch of topics that we could talk about, and I think I contributed maybe two or three, something like that, maybe a little bit more, but not much. And Scott Sword did the other, I don't know how many, 10, 20, something like that. It was ridiculous. And I was like, wow, you've got a lot of things that we could talk about, and I like all of them, so let's keep them on the list. And I was going through our list because Scott Stewart was like, what are we going to talk about? And I was like, well, we've got this thing. It's talking about, we've got one topic, which is like the joy of reading. We've got one topic, which is the joy of vinyl. We've got another topic that is this other thing. I was like, well, let's just talk about our history and sort of how we consume media, which was another topic, actually. I was like, if we've got how we consume media, like my history with books, your history with vinyl, like we can put those three things together and talk about that for a good long time, probably, which is ironic because we have to be on a tight time frame for this episode. But there's no reason that just because we talk about something once, we can't go back and talk about it again.
Absolutely.
Especially if we think of new ways to do it. Actually, by the way, I don't know, Scott Sword, how much you've been pushing this, but we've been in the search for new ideas because that list is finally starting to near its end. But in the quest for new ideas, we've talked about sort of integrating some other aspects of the thing so that we can keep going with these more cultural topics. Scott Sword, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, we've learned a lot from each other, and um, it wouldn't come as a surprise the fact now I've got a lot more contact with people from many different countries thanks to the Twitch streaming and things, and also from the Fear of Jackal community. Um, we I can't remember who it was who actually suggested the idea, but we both we're both definitely in agreement about it. To try and get some guests on the podcast, if people
Yeah.
are keen. And just in the spirit of teaching each other about, or teaching all of us about different cultures and things, because I'm finding, at least within my own Twitch audience, right, I've got people who are from Hungary and Turkey and Norway and even different parts of the US, right? Obviously, someone like yourself is in one state and we'll have people from different states or whatever, and I don't know very much, right? That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
finding a lot of the time when people say to me, "Oh, I'm from this country." I'm like, "Oh, great. Tell me about it, because I know nothing." So, and we've done also that side inside the Discord server that I've got. We've been playing a little bit of a funny game at times where I'll post some sort of funny British English idiom or expression, and I'll just say, "How do you say this in your language?" And the some of the stuff that has been given to us has been pure gold in terms of
Oh yeah,
just
it's been great.
entertainment value, and gives you a bit of an insight into how different languages and cultures work. It's very interesting. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's basically a little bit of a plea, I guess, but not a complete desperate one. But still, if anybody listening out there is interested in guest appearing and you think you would be a good cultural ambassador for your region slash country, or if you have been like us, obviously the fact that I'm from the UK living in Spain, and Rook has already talked about his experiences in Japan. We've talked about those cultural shocks and differences between our homeland and then going back and having to readjust and all this sort of thing. Um, if you're also in that boat, if you've lived in a different country and you've experienced those culture shocks, and upon going there initially, then returning and things, we'd be very interested to hear those. If you want to come onto a podcast episode and contribute, then you'd be very welcome to. Just feel free just to leave a comment down below in the video, or if you are inside my Discord community or whatever, if you want to join the Discord community and then let me know through that, then you'd be very welcome.
Yeah, I feel like your Discord community is probably the best gathering place because that way we can just get them in on a Discord call.
Hmm,
I don't
definitely.
know. I don't know how the exact logistics will work out, but that just immediately seems to me like an option. But I figured, if we don't tell people we're thinking about that, nobody's gonna volunteer.
Very
So
true. I have been dropping subtle hints in a couple of my recent Twitch streams, um, but
nice.
yeah, we'll see if any we get a nibble.
Yeah, I'd be excited to learn about other cultures. I love doing it. So it
Absolutely.
would be cool to have some other people on. And another angle that we could do, I think this may have been at some point like one of the things that we were talking about that led us to this final idea. But I think it might be interesting, right? If there's some particular piece of media that you think is like really strongly associated with your culture, you
Hmm.
could recommend it to us, and then we could all have experienced it beforehand, come on, and then talk about that for a little while. I
Right.
think that could be really interesting.
Yeah.
Scott Sword could maybe have me watch some Wallace and Gromit.
Oh man. Oh, I would so love you to watch Wallace and Gromit, and then you have to react to all of that. Oh yes, that's an idea. That's some good homework for you. I'll stop loading Wingspan. I'll stop uploading Wingspan videos if that means you watch Wallace and Gromit. And just all sort of the cultural traits and things. So there's quite a lot of funny sort of regional jokes in there. Oh, something that's one that's just popped into my head. I don't know if you were part of this conversation, but there was a conversation on the Discord about the word pudding. I don't know if you
Hmm.
saw this or you were
I
engaging.
scanned it quickly. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess then you were. I think it was snuff that was mostly talking about.
Yeah, I think it was mostly Snuff who did the actual research.
Um, so you'd have quickly glanced. So for people who don't know, there's a general sort of trend in the UK that we like to call our desserts pudding. We
Hmm.
A lot of dessert dishes have the word pudding in the name, but there are also ones which are not dessert based. So, for example, we have black pudding, which is basically a blood sausage. We've got white pudding, which is also a similar thing, but it's not a pudding, but that's what we call it. There's also another one that's called Yorkshire pudding, which is neither a pudding, and then also I don't think it's from Yorkshire, so I don't know why it's called a Yorkshire pudding, but never mind. That's what happens, right? You got
That's
really
what
old
happens.
countries with strange traditions. Um, but then we often like to use the word pudding as a substitute for dessert. And I
Mm.
think, in particular, I'm going to quickly look onto the Discord now just to make sure I don't start misquoting people, especially people who are not here, right? Because especially Paul Snuff in particular, he can't defend himself. I don't want to put words in his mouth or anything.
Right.
But I think there's a little bit of disbelief about this. And I think then me and some of the other Brits were like, yeah, this is legit. And the reason why I'm remembering this now is because I've been watching a UK comedy series with my wife called Outnumbered. I don't know if that's something that's come across or has made it onto your radar yet.
Not yet.
So it's called Outnumbered because there's a family of five, two parents and three kids. So the parents are
Hmm.
outnumbered.
Outnumbered. Yeah.
The kids are mental. They're just they all got different personalities and they're very funny. But the cool thing about the way the comedy works is, especially when the kids were younger in the series, most of the things they had to say was completely unscripted.
Ah.
Because a lot of the thing that the creators of the show wanted to avoid was when you try to give child actors lines, it becomes very robotic or not
Hmm.
natural. So all they would literally do before a scene is say to the kid, I want you to talk about this topic. Off you go. And then they
Hmm.
would just make stuff up. And then the two adult actors, who were the parents, would then have to almost improv their reactions to what the kids were saying. And then they might be given guidance like you have to try and steer them onto this particular topic or something, or you have to finish on this type of line or whatever. But they didn't know what the kids would come out with half the time. So it's very
Wow.
it feels a bit more real. It feels like a legitimate conversation that families would have, and the way the kids carry on and fight with each other and whatever.
Hmm.
Obviously, the plots are a little bit exaggerated, but still, it's very good. The reason why I found this really funny was just the fact we'd mentioned this topic, so it was very
Hmm.
conscious in my brain of going, oh yeah, we say the word pudding for dessert. In that show, they've used the word pudding so many times,
Hmm.
and every time they say the word pudding, I just think of the conversation in the Discord.
Yep.
If I hadn't had that conversation, I probably wouldn't have noticed. But it's the
Yeah,
fact it
you
was on
probably
my
wouldn't
brain.
even.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would just completely, fly under the radar. But yeah, you're like cued to see it. That was like when I was studying kanji. There, I think this is what is this Dunning Kruger? It's one of those effects that has like a fancy like set of people's researchers' names attached to it.
Hmm.
But when you learn something, you start seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
And I would have this with kanji all the time. I would learn a set of kanji and be like, these kanji are so obscure. They're you never see them anywhere. And then I'd like walk down the street and see it like 20 times. What? How have I missed this my entire life?
Oh,
It's funny.
I think you might have got the wrong effect. I think you got a different. The Dunning Kruger
I got a different
effect.
effect.
That is people who have limited competence overestimate their ability.
Okay, maybe it's
Um,
Bader Meinhof.
let's see.
I'm glad you're looking this up, so I don't have to do this after the fact.
Yeah, you don't need to write a comment to keep you company.
That's right.
This is gonna be riveting for the people, isn't it? While we try and find this out.
Yeah, look up Bader Meinhof for me, Scott Sword.
What? Say that again.
Bader Meinhof. I don't even know how you spell it. Don't ask me. I imagine if you search for something like it, it'll come up with it
Yeah,
though.
there you go. Yeah, Bader-Meinhof. Frequency illusion or recency illusion. Cognitive bias where you perceive something you've recently learned or become aware of it. Yes, yeah. A completely different topic, but we've done it too. The car that my wife and I have recently bought, is a car that I mean, the brand we knew existed, obviously it's a very famous brand in Spain, but the actual model or the make of the car, um, we'd never heard of it before going into the dealership and talking about it, and now we see them everywhere.
Oh
It's
man,
ridiculous. It's
so
again,
funny.
it's just the same thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's the thing that you mentioned. That's something else we could do. If people don't want to come onto the podcast to be a guest, but if they have something, if you have a particular cultural, especially media, right, that you want us
Hmm.
to watch or listen to, and then we can't really react to it on the podcast in the same way because we've got to be a little bit careful with copyright and stuff. But if we
Right.
could then talk about it, I think that could be neat as well because there could be loads of stuff that you and I could find out about our own countries, right?
Hmm.
Already
For sure.
to get the ball rolling.
Oh,
Um,
if we do this, like definitely on the list is I want you to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
as a Brit, I've never seen it, which is terrible.
I
But
know. I
I
know
guess
that's why it's on my list. I want to see
right.
your own reaction to your own culture.
um, I get if I yeah. I try to think what I mean. I guess Wallace and Gromit would have to be top of the list for you if you haven't seen that.
Right. Yeah, I haven't.
The
So that would be fascinating, I'm sure.
bound to, yeah. There's so many things that are coming to mind. We'll have to structure. We'll have to find a way of structuring it. Oh, there
Yeah.
is also another one. There's a one of I posted. There's a really good content creator called Liam Carpenter who does. He's a Brit living in Germany. I posted a couple of them in the Discord, and he
Hmm.
does videos basically making fun of the British German stereotypes and different aspects of German culture and British culture.
Hmm.
And there's a couple in particular where his British persona suddenly becomes unleashed, and I want you to watch it and see if you can understand what on earth he's talking about with all these idiomatic expressions and things. So there's
Ooh.
a lot of stuff we could do with that. So yeah, but if anybody who wants to contribute anything, then I'll leave the links to the Discord below. Doesn't matter if you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify. I'll leave the links below, and you can join. You'll be very, very welcome. But when you do join the community, just quickly say when you join, "Oh, I'm here from the podcast," so that I know where you're coming from.
Right.
But you'll be very welcome. But yeah, the joy of media. I mean, this my contribution is probably very short because I feel like I've basically consumed no media apart from YouTube and that's not. Does that count as media? I guess nowadays it does.
Well, I
But
feel, yeah. I mean, I feel like, we've talked about one of the topics that spurred this was the joy of vinyl. And
mm,
I think that was your contribution. And what is it? I think that this is a good place to start. Might as well. What is it that you think is so special about listening to music on vinyl in particular?
um, for me personally, it's been able to connect with the music the way that the artist intended. They created an album or an
Hmm.
EP or whatever length format they've gone for, and they want you to sit down and listen to it in that order. They don't want you just to listen to one hit single and ignore everything else that they've made. I feel that's they've created the album as that art form, so it should be enjoyed
Hmm.
in that art form. Um, and just also, especially with vinyl, it's not a. I feel what a lot of things that happen now, and I'm very guilty of this, by the way, is
Hmm.
a lot of media is in the background media, right? How many of us
Right.
have podcasts on, but in the background while we're doing something else? How many of us listen to music in the background while we're doing something else, or even have
Careful,
the
careful,
TV on?
Scott Sword. This is like the purpose of this podcast.
Well, I know
Don't alienate our listeners.
that's fine. That's why we're making this for them, right? I mean,
Yes.
hey, we don't know. They might be listening to this with nothing else going on. They might
Oh,
be
I hope not.
poor them if that's the case.
Seriously, keep us out of the background, please. Don't
Uh,
put us on your TV and watch us.
oh,
Watch the. Go ahead.
they could see the footage of Edinburgh on the big screen. Why not?
It'd be lovely. I just feel like we don't merit their full attention.
But like, how many times do you talk to somebody and they just say, "Oh, we had it on in the background," whatever it is. You
Yeah.
you 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 end up picking up bits and pieces of TV shows or other bits of media or culture or whatever. But it's all kind of, as I said, bits and pieces at the time, right? You just hear it's all kind of in the background stuff, but not with full attention anymore. Whereas vinyl very much forces, it's almost like a book in the same way, right? It's that type of media. It's tactile, which I think is really neat. You can build a collection with it, and you can look at it proudly and go, "This is my collection. I built that up." Rather than everything's digital, you have access to everything, and nothing's really personalized in the same way. At least that's my view anyway. And it forces you just to sit down and just listen, and that's it. Or a physical book. You have to sit down and just read. You can't do 10 other million things at the same time. That being said, I've been really bad at it because when we moved into this flat that we're in, got a record player, and I said to myself, I cannot wait to be able to actually sit down and play a record. I still haven't done it yet, which is terrible, and it's something I should really maybe do over the next sort of month or two. When I want to take a break, I should just sit down and maybe listen to a vinyl or two. Not that I've got many vinyls here, but I've got a vinyl collection back in Scotland I need to rescue at some point. But it's just that fact where you can appreciate media in a way where you can't skip anything. You have to listen to it from start to finish. You can
start to halfway.
Right. Oh yeah, of course, until you flip the disc over, right? But I think that's nice. You can listen to it in those little chunks. I think when we talked about it was Alter Bridge, The Last Hero, right? As an example.
Yes.
I remember when I first listened to that album. It's a great album. Let's make it clear. But I found it very strange when people were doing reviews on it and saying that it was a little bit stodgy or a little bit tiring to consume, and they said, oh, it was a little bit too long. I never felt that when I first listened to it, but the reason why is because I was listening to it on vinyl for the first time. So every 3 or 4 songs, I was able to get up and flip the disc over, and that even just those few seconds, you kind of disconnect a little bit, and then it restarts again. If you listen to it start to finish on digital or CD, then yeah, I get it. It's a little bit of it can be a bit of a slog. Just depends on, and then you can say that for other media or other albums as well. It doesn't have to be that one, right? There's loads of other albums. I can sit there and go, oh, that was too long. Whereas maybe you listen to it on vinyl, you might get a slightly different appreciation from it because you listen to it one side at a time and you take a little break in between or something. I
don't know if I talked about this on the air or not, but that was an interesting thing for me because what I ended up doing, I've talked a little bit about how like eclectic my journey through music has been, but after I found out about Thick as a Brick, I was like, I want to listen to more Jethro Tull. And so I started going through the band's catalog somewhat at random. But I was also listening to this podcast alongside it. Trying to remember the name of it. It's based off of a lyric from one of the songs. Vernacular Verbose is the name of the podcast. I would definitely recommend that if you like Jethro Tull. I think that podcast is worth checking out because they sort of give their thoughts about each song on an album. They do these full album reviews, and they just give their thoughts on each track, and they've got little snippets playing in a YouTube copyright-friendly way in the background, and they just go through the whole album and do that. And they don't necessarily do it for the length of said song. They'll do it for as long as they have thoughts on it, and then they'll move on to the next one. But they literally go like track by track, for each album, which I think is an interesting format. And I started listening to that, and I started listening to more Jethro Tull, and I started to realize, boy, it's really easy to consume these albums because they're like 40 minutes long, right? It's not a full hour that you get on a standard CD. And I think it was somewhere on the podcast they were mentioning how it's like not quite the same when the CDs are just a little bit too long. And I was like, yeah, I agree. I've had that same experience that I think the 60 minutes is a little bit less manageable than the 40 if you want really close, intensive listening, right? It's another thing if it's on in the background. And this is, I was saying before, you don't give people a hard time. I think you can listen to the same thing both attentively and not attentively, right? I think it's a good thing that when I was getting into Alter Bridge, one method of my listening was like locked in, focused my full attention on that album. And I didn't do it on vinyl. I have an iPad hooked up to my TV, which is hooked up to my sound system. And so I've got a nice big thing where it displays the album art on my TV, and I can listen to the music and I can experience it attentively that way. And I listen to it like that at least once. And then, the next day I can just have it on my iPhone and I'm doing some dishes or something, right? And I've got it playing in my ears, and I don't have to listen to the whole thing. I could just pick and choose my favorite songs and get that sort of convenience and just have that way of keeping it in my life as I go about my day-to-day life. I feel like if you only exclusively focus in on that attentive experience, you can sort of end up missing out because, like you said, right, you've got your whole record set up in your apartment and you haven't listened to it, right? Because it demands too much of you. um, but the point that I really wanted to make when I started all that, I'm so terrible at getting tangents on my own topics. But the point that I really wanted to make when I started all this was I eventually, when I was listening to some of Alter Bridge's later albums, because of the experience that I had with Jethro Tull, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to artificially recreate with my digital setup the idea of flipping over a vinyl. And I would like get to, I'd go like 3 songs at a time, and then I'd stand up and I'd hit pause, and I might go do something else, right? Not for long, because I would want my focus to remain mostly on the musical experience that I was having. But, I'd go get another glass of water. I'd make myself some tea, right? Something to that effect. And I'd come and I'd sit back down and I'd hit play and it would continue, and then I'd take another break, right? And I found that my appreciation for the albums just skyrocketed once I started doing that.
Right.
It wasn't this like attrition experience where like my attention was slowly fading away into nothing. I have the same experience when I go to like museums. I find that as much as I love experiencing art in museums, after about 2 to 3 hours, I stop taking anything in a serious way, right? It just becomes harder and harder for me to appreciate the stuff that I'm seeing, even if the stuff that I'm seeing is magnificent. And it's like, okay, I got to do like, 2 to 3 hours and then go to the cafe or something. I need a break. I need like a bit of a space, some sort of interval where I can regain that attention and then go back and experience more of the art gallery. I do the same thing, in shorter chunks with music. And I agree with you. That totally changes the experience, and I think it's worthwhile to do it that way.
I guess it depends on. I was just thinking about it, like when I used to buy a lot more music, just because hobbies are changing, but also just because my access to buying music isn't as good now, because where I live there isn't the same accessibility to music, and I have to go to a big city, and we don't go so often. Whereas when I used to live in Edinburgh, it was so easy for me to walk 15 minutes to a record shop or something and look through vinyls or CDs or whatever. But it's funny when you talk about the museum. I find if I go to a place like a museum, I'm not good at art, by the way. But if I go to like some sort of history museum or something, if I have to pay to go in, I want to get the full experience worth, and I almost torture myself to see
Wow.
or as much of the museum as possible, because I feel like I've paid for this. And same when I buy when I buy certain media, it's like I want to take the full advantage of this. But if it's something's a little bit more easy accessible or whatever, you can go in like those smaller chunks maybe. So there's a lot of, just say, if you ever go to Edinburgh, there's the museum there. Well, at least it was when I was there. It was free to enter, so you could go and experience it in little chunks. You don't have to say, "Oh, I'm going to have to see." There's so much to see, but I don't have to see all of it today. I can see a little bit at a time, and you can maybe appreciate that more rather than trying to make your way through, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the advantage of having non-tactile media like digital, I think we talked about before, is it's great for discovering music. Because you do get Spotify recommending stuff to you. You can just search for a band. You can listen to a couple of songs. If you don't like it, you could then flip over to something else. Whereas obviously back in the day, we had to buy the vinyls or the CDs. If you picked up a dud, well, you've got a dud in your collection.
Yeah.
Ironically,
that's basically still how I listen to music. Like I've never signed up for Spotify or anything like it. I've thought about it. I thought about like YouTube Premium, for instance, which would include YouTube Music, because on the one, I watch a lot of YouTube, so that would improve my experience on YouTube by cutting out the ads, and it would get me access to a music service, which I feel like, on the one hand, I sort of like the fact that all of my music that I acquire is like eclectic and sort of related to different people I know or different things that I'm watching and different things that I'm exposed to, right? My music collection is very tied in with just various experiences I've had in my life, and none of it's come from an algorithm. But on the other hand, it's very limited, right? And so I feel like if I seriously want to get into listening to music, I need to be on something, right? Like in the old days, it would be the radio, and it's some sort of like music streaming service where they can just algorithmically recommend you stuff as long as you're interested in, or like you can, I'm sure, browse through other people's playlists and things like that, right? So it makes the discovery way easier. But I've always been hesitant to do it because I hear such terrible things about what it does for like the artists and how terrible the like pay rates are and how it's sort of destroying the music industry. And I'm just like, uh, maybe I just want to buy a CD. I was watching a video the other day where the person was talking about how I'm trying to remember. I think it was Mary Spender was talking about how she recently had like a limited run of CDs produced, and she was talking about it like from a couple of different perspectives. But the one that I remember was she was like, yeah, like from an artist's perspective, the nice thing about CDs is if I sell one of them, that's worth something like 8,000 streams,
Hmm.
maybe more.
Right.
And I was just like, man, that's insane.
Hmm.
Like how terrible it is for artists to trying to be creative and thrive in this climate. And there's a YouTube channel that I watch about this guy who mostly talks about anime these days because he blew up talking about a show called Free Run Beyond Journey's End, and it's called like Pay Talks Anime or something like that. And he basically tried to be a musician for a very substantial portion of his life, and he was pretty upfront in one of his videos that he made about like it was an anime about a bunch of girls that formed a band, and he was like, yeah, like I love watching this stuff because I really wanted to make it as a musician, and having like been on Spotify and come out with all this music and all these albums, I just haven't been able to make it work. And I was so I hear things like that, and I'm like, maybe I don't want to sign up for Spotify.
Yeah, it's so
not that
tricky.
I
It's a double-edged sword,
not
right?
that I have anything. Sorry, just to finish the thought, I just want to clarify because I know people are probably listening to this on Spotify. I don't have anything against you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just that double-edged sword, right? It's what? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the way I feel about it is obviously now at the moment, just because I'm doing so much stuff with streaming and YouTube and things, I'm not consuming as much music as I used to. But when I did, it was very much a case of I would really comb through Spotify and find bands that I end up really liking, and then I would then say, right, I'm going to support the artist directly now. I'm going to go and buy that album, or I'm going to go and watch their
Mm-hmm.
concert, or whatever. And that's why I ended up doing or buying their merch or whatever it was I did, because I felt like I wanted to try and support them a little bit more directly, rather than letting Spotify take
Right.
care of it. But I use Spotify as the tool for me to discover them. If I didn't have Spotify, then I wouldn't have discovered all those bands,
Mm-hmm.
and or certain
Yeah.
styles of music, or whatever. So again, I think it's like a lot of things. It all depends on how people engage with the media. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there will be other people who
Yeah,
just
and I
say
think that's
digital only. They pay the Spotify Premium, and that's it. They don't pay anything else. Okay, um, that's how they want to do it. Then it's yeah, the life as a musician in general, especially music. We're talking about music. Must be really tough. Not getting.
oh, it's got to be awful.
They must be. I mean, I don't know what it's like for all different genres. But I know for rock music, they seem to say that they make most of the money through the tours, not through. And they back in the old days they would tour to promote an album. Now they make an
Right.
album to promote a tour.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I've heard that sort of flip, which is funny. And I'm glad you brought up the point because it is true, right? Uh, if the music industry was relying on my listening habits, it would be dead. So, yeah, there is the other side of the coin there that you if you don't listen to a lot of music to know what's out there, you can't support those bands that you love.
right. And it pains me a little bit that I've got this nice CD collection of lots of stuff I should be listening to, and I haven't been. But at the same time, I can think about it. Well, I've that CD that I've bought, even if I haven't listened to it as much as I should have, it's still gone towards the artist, right? So, but then again,
Mm-hmm.
even with physical media, right, you've got the band and all the PR that goes with it, and to the record label and this and whatever, right? Unless it's a small
Oh yeah.
independent artist doing it all themselves, then
Right.
the cut is still small, but it's better than
Yes.
nothing. So, and you never,
Hmm.
if I like them enough, and if they end up coming close to where I live, then I might go and see them. And then that would have been a gig I would have gone to. I wouldn't have gone to otherwise. That might have been merch I wouldn't have bought otherwise. So,
Hmm.
eh, it's. I think people who are big enough fans of a certain genre or a certain band or whatever, they will support them no matter what. Um,
Yeah.
and there'll always be people who say listen to lots of different types of music, but never enough to commit. They don't feel extremely passionately about one band in particular or one artist or something, and that's fine.
Hmm.
It's gonna be that way. So I'm not
Right.
saying that one way is right or wrong, but that's just kind of the way I try to do it. It's something it pains me a little bit. I've not been able to listen to as much music as I have. It's just because, yeah, especially gaming, things have changed. I said it before that the reason why I listened to so much music was because I was playing
Mm.
the driving simulators. So I'd have music on
Right.
while I was driving, and I'd always make sure I'd have, because I didn't have two monitors at that time, I'd have my mobile phone perched next to me, and because I could link the Spotify accounts from my laptop to my phone, so I could see what was playing. So I was able to listen, but also see the name of the song and be able to identify with it and go, all right, that song has that rhythm. Especially when you start getting into more progressive stuff or whatever, where the song title might not necessarily be in the chorus. Right, so you can't
Hmm.
easily identify what the song is by the name. I've got one at the moment. The one album I've been listening to quite a bit recently has been the new album from Ghost, who are Swedish.
Okay.
The kind of the easiest way to explain them would be like satanic ABBA metal.
Hmm.
Which it's like it sounds like the weirdest combination, but anybody who
Yeah,
kind of likes Ghost a little
that's not a
bit
set of words.
would be like, yeah, that's kind of what it is.
It's not a set of words that I would put together, but
Yeah,
I believe you.
yeah, the lead singer dresses up as Papa Emeritus, almost like this Antichrist figure, and there are sort of references to Satan and that. But the lyrics are really catchy, and it's almost like listening to ABBA, but it's more rock and metal. um, so they've released a new album, and I've just been loving it. But the thing is, I've been listening to it in the background. So I know all of the
Hmm.
songs, and as soon as the song kicks in, I know the rhythm, I know the chorus, I know where it's going. But if you said to me, "Oh, do you like," and then you say the name of the song, wouldn't know. Some of them I'm
Right.
starting to remember, and the ones I've watched on YouTube because it has the name in the title. But because I'm often listening when I don't see the name on the screen, so I'm doing other stuff, I'm washing the dishes or cooking or whatever. I'm just hearing the song. I don't know what the name is. Um,
Yep.
so that's the only problem, especially with that one in particular. There's quite. I mean, I'm gonna get butchered if I get this wrong, but a lot of the names are in Latin.
Hmm.
So I haven't got a clue. I should just probably look up one and just see if I can. I mean, the album is called Skeletor.
Okay.
Don't know what that means. I don't even
Is
know.
it a reference to the old 80s He-Man cartoon?
Uh, pass. Haven't got a clue.
Okay. That's what it sounds like to me, but I don't think
Pass.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like it would fit my image of what you described, but maybe it does. Maybe I just don't have a very good image of Ghost.
Well, one of them is called Umbra or Umbra. I don't even know if that's an
Like
English word.
shadow. Yeah. No, that's like a that's Latin for shadow.
Oh, is it? Okay, right. And there's another one which is called Massilia Amori.
Okay. Yeah,
But
that one I don't know. I don't know Latin. I know Umbra because
well,
of some work that I'm doing.
only because of my knowledge of Spanish, I can guess it means like love missile, and the chorus of the
Ah.
song is love rocket.
Well, there you go.
But again, you have to sit there a little bit and try and make the connection with it. Now I'm looking at it so much. The lyrics, or the lyrics, the titles do make a bit more sense. There's not as many of them as Latin as I thought. But
Okay.
still, it's one of those
It's
albums.
always the ones that you're paying attention to that have the Latin titles, and you're like, "What is this?"
Possibly, yeah, 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 yeah. very catchy, very very catchy music, very infectious sort of music. But
Cool.
again, that's probably the only album I can think of off the top of my head that I've listened to pretty consistently recently, which is new. There's been some other new stuff
Mm.
come out. I was going to ask, have you delved back into the road of Alter Bridge? I've been listening to a little bit of Alter Bridge, just kind of here and there, just like very scattergun approach, not really listening to full album.
I've been
I guess I've listened to the albums so many times. Like I feel like I'm entitled now to sort of pick and choose what songs I want to listen to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I said, right? Like it both listening experiences have their values. And right, I feel like you if you're a real fan of a band, you sort of would benefit. You owe it to yourself, maybe, right? Like again, I'm sure there are people out there who just can't listen to things like this, and that's fine. Live your life. But for me, I like to at least once, ideally 3 times, but at least once, sit down and attentively listen to things all the way through. And then I can pick and choose if I'm not in that mode, right? It's just different ways of appreciating the art. And like in terms of your question, right? Like I haven't had as much time as I would like. I mean, see the topic I was when I was talking about how burnt out I was starting to get at the top of this episode. I've been doing too much, but I've been meaning to go back to Walk the Sky because that's one of the ones where I've sat down and listened to it attentively, but I haven't really found like I haven't put it on much in the background.
Mm,
And the funny thing that happened to me with that album was the first time I listened to it, my experience was, whoa, this is different. Because I noticed that it was immediately obvious that it was a big shift in their sort of musical dynamic compared to the previous album.
mm-hmm.
And I think I may have talked to you about this. I don't know if it was on the air or not, but we've definitely talked. And I was like, this is really different. You were like, yeah, it's different. Uh, and I found myself sort of drawn to a few songs here and there, but it's one of the ones where I listened to it attentively like 2, 3 times. And I was like, okay, now I got to put this on my phone. I got it on my phone and I haven't really put it on in the background. But what happened to me was over time, I would just find myself sort of humming or singing parts of the songs.
Mm,
And so as it sort of went by and like locked itself in my head, even though I wasn't necessarily listening to it, I started to like appreciate the album more. And so by the time I did that final sit down, the last time I listened to the album, which was probably like a couple months ago now, um, but I sat down and listened to it, and I was like, well, I really like this now. Which was funny because my initial reaction was, this is really different, and I wasn't sure how much I liked it, aside from like a handful of songs. And now it's like, oh, pretty much anything I like now.
which I still find very funny because you were complaining that AB3 was such a downer album, whereas Walk the
It
Sky is a
was.
lot more uplifting. And the fact
Yeah.
that you had those doubts about it is kind of interesting. You've been sucked down to the slightly gloomier side of Alter Bridge for too long. Because also there's one more album to go after that. They're teasing new stuff, so I'm very excited to see what they come up with. But I mean, I've been pretty poor in terms of I've been finding this quite nice actually because I've been driving a little bit.
Hmm.
So even tomorrow we've got a bit of a long drive. I will put some music on in the background, but the thing is, it won't be. I've never really driven alone, so I can take advantage and go. Oh, I'm going to put on something completely brand new and have it on. Because
Hmm.
I'll just normally, in this case, because there'll be other people in the car who are talking and whatever. I'll put on the radio or something, and just hear random stuff being shuffled. Um, but there's a the list of stuff I need to listen to just keeps growing, unfortunately. And I keep saying
Mm.
I need to get around to that band, I need to get around to that band, and yeah, there's just too little time, and there's too much media. My thing I've probably talked about it before is I'm terrible with films. In particular, I'm really weak on films. There are so many quote unquote classic films that I've never
Yeah.
seen. But this might be a bit controversial. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. If something is really that good, I will get round to watching it eventually. That's my sort of mentality with it.
Yeah.
I can't do everything. I can't. I mean, the fact that I play video games, I can easily cut that out. I don't have time for other stuff. But if a TV
Hmm.
series is really that good, if a film is really that good, I'll get round to it eventually.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, there's just too much stuff. And then then we could be talking about that with films, but then you'd be sitting there going, yeah, but what about all these classic novels you haven't read? You should be reading all of these. And there's simply not enough time in the day for all of it. That's the problem. Um,
Yeah, I I've been on a journey
oh,
in regards to this sort of thing, where I I have completionist tendencies. I talked about this before. And so for a lot of my life, I have wanted to have a strong breadth of experiences. And it's not like I'm faking the interest in these things, right? I'm genuinely interested in a lot of different forms of media. But one thing that I've learned about myself over time is that the way that I work is I get really into something for a long time
hmm,
and then I move on from it. And the one constant, and I think I've said this before, the one constant in my life has been books and reading. But even there, right? And this is the other thing when I get back to, because what you said that sort of sparked my thought about this journey was like um, the idea that, oh, you would say that you haven't read these novels and you really should. No, I wouldn't. No, I've come around to the point where, because my own instinct has always been like, I need to experience as much as I can. I need to experience everything. I need to, when someone makes a reference, I want to understand it. That hasn't changed. But I no longer care about getting it instantly. I just, like, if I'm working on a translation and someone makes a reference, I need to know it. But so that part I want to hold on to. But when it comes to things like, do I really think that everyone out there needs to have read The Great Gatsby? No, no, I really don't think so. I love The Great Gatsby. I should probably reread it more because I've only read it like 2, 3 times. But and I can barely remember it. This is the other thing. Like, things that I used to like love, that I thought of as like core to my being. I discovered this when I did my big Dostoevsky reread project. Um, and it was fascinating how of that stuff that I had completely forgotten. And I reread it and I was like, oh, it was really a strange experience because I was like, that's where I got that idea. I
mm,
was like, oh, interesting. Like, this is why I've had this like critique. Like, I would take these philosophy classes and they would be like, reason is the only important thing in human life. I'm exaggerating, but they would say something sort of similar, right? The one thing that makes humans special is reason, and we philosophers um, put it are the ultimate workers of reason, right? You sort of get this impression. At least I did. The philosophy classes I was taking. I like philosophy, by the way. I listened to a ton of just philosophy podcasts for fun. But when I was in college and taking these classes, I get this very like reason forward understanding of human beings, and I was like, I don't think that's true. I don't think human beings are particularly rational. And while I think that there are benefits to rational thinking and exercising reason in your life, I don't think that it's like the be all end all of human knowledge and attainment. And I think that you can, like, it's beneficial for you to look at things outside of it. Like, if you try to ignore emotional responses, you're going to have a bad time in your life. um and I was like, I was reading Dostoevsky, and like, he was making this point about how, like, not directly obviously, but like one of the themes that would come up in some of his work is like rationality sometimes falls short and fails to account for our emotional experiences. And I was like, yes,
mm.
wait a minute, maybe this is influenced, right? Like, why I thought the way that I did when I was taking those philosophy classes. I just didn't realize it because I'd forgotten something that I'd loved from literature, right? It was crazy.
I definitely agree. The emotional response is so key, right? And the way that you
Mm-hmm.
connect with, well, I mean, anything, but especially with media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the as you were talking about that, I was trying to think of examples specific with me. So I mean, uh, two very important, or two, I was going to say, two important sort of franchises of media. Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Have you seen both or one?
Yes,
Okay.
I've seen both.
What are your general thoughts on them?
I like them. I think that well, I don't want to delve into the controversy, but I think that the original Star Wars trilogy is basically all you need
Hmm,
in that regard.
right.
Lord of the Rings, I've had a very long relationship with. From wanting to love those books as a kid because all the authors that I was reading as a kid seemed to like them, but I could not get into them. To eventually getting older and learning to love them, and then watching the movies and having the movies come out and sort of change the cultural experience around engaging with that property, and it driving a whole bunch of other people to the books that had never read them before. And then eventually discovering there's a great podcast, The Tolkien Professor, where I haven't listened to it in a long time, so I don't know what the latest episodes are like, but I went through that back catalog because it was a much older podcast when I started listening to it. Like, I didn't start at the beginning. So I went back through the archives and just really appreciated the various analyses that he made and featured on his podcast, and his way of sort of approaching those books. And eventually sort of he did this thing where he would talk about like adaptations and the challenges that come with it, and sort of how it can be a little bit maybe this is a little bit of me probably seeping into it rather than something that he would have said, but it struck me as very similar as a sort of process in adapting like from one form of media to another, as the sort of skills that you need when you're translating from one language to another. Because it's all about preserving ideas in a form that is different than it was originally presented in.
Right.
So I think there's actually a lot of connections that you can draw there. But anyway, the Lord of the Rings has had sort of this very strong through line running across my life.
Right.
But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, so that's the thing, right? You've got a very strong connection with that particular series, right? So I saw both films, sagas, we'll just call it that way.
Sure.
I've seen, or maybe I haven't seen the last Star Wars, but I've definitely seen all the way through 1 to 8. I watched it in that order, because I never watched it as a kid. It was something that my dear wife was fed up of, that I'd ignored them for so long. And there's one point in particular where we had a very long train ride, about 10 hours worth, and she said,
wow,
take your laptop, we're going to watch all of the Star Wars films, and that's what we did.
Wow.
And then
That must have been an experience.
it was. I mean, especially the more thing for me was when I started understanding all the meme references and things, and knowing where the source of them was from, right? Because it's so memeable and so quotable.
Yep, definitely.
And obviously not knowing.
And it's been tremendously influential in pop culture for like what?
Yeah.
40, 45, 50 years? It's crazy.
And obviously I had a basic sense of what the plot was just by picking it up along the way from maybe small clips or from hearing other people talk about it or whatever, but not knowing the exact intricacies of, the politics involved and all that sort of thing. Then with Lord of the Rings, I've watched it a lot more, even more recently. Because in particular, it was something that my dear best men at my wedding pointed out to the entire gathering that I'd never watched Lord of the Rings, and there was a very audible gasp amongst the audience that I hadn't watched Lord of the Rings. So soon after that, I think it was maybe during one of the holidays or something, my wife was like, right, you're watching this and you're not getting out of it. Did I enjoy them? Yes. I can't deny that they were enjoyable. I'm not going to say, no, I hated them. No, of course not. I enjoyed watching them. But did they move me? Right? And that's kind of the thing. Did they have that emotional response? And the answer was no. I would happily rewatch them. I wouldn't do it out of my under my own free will kind of thing. But if I was with somebody who said, "Oh, do you want to watch that film?" I'd rewatch it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Did I enjoy them? Yeah, I've got no criticism of them. Obviously, not knowing the source material for Lord of the Rings is a potential, missing piece of that puzzle there. But it wasn't that same emotional response. Whereas we talked about before with musical epiphanies, right? I am moved by music. That's just a media that moves me more for some reason. In terms of having a long-term effect on me. If I hadn't watched Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, I think I would just be the same person. Whereas I feel like some of the musical epiphanies I've had has been way more transformative on my life. And again, that's just so personal, right? You'll be moved by one sort of media, whereas I'll be moved by a different type, and that's just. I think it's nice that we can have the same type of experiences, but with completely different forms of media.
Yeah. Actually, this sort of I had no idea I was gonna bring this up, but it reminds me. I've been watching on YouTube lately um, this woman who goes and talks about like the details of houses and their interiors and the different and their exteriors and their like design and how they're put together and the different like eras of history that you can see in them and the presentations and like I don't care I don't care about this stuff at all in the sense of like I don't go and like seek out magazines of old houses. I was watching earlier today. I was watching a video on my lunch break um, that was about doll houses and their history as sort of both documents and playthings in the sense that they go back to like I forget what it was. It was like, but it at least hundreds of years, right? People have been fascinated with the idea of making these little miniatures that look like actual homes and sometimes have functional like things inside them where they'll have like actual electricity or actual running water and all these like intricate little details and how they sort of capture the life of an era in them. And at the same time, they're playthings for people to like arrange and imagine and girls will play with them and they got all the dolls and everything, right? And arguably boys have their version as well, right? Like I don't know if you grew up with Mighty Max, but it was these little environments where you had all this like adventure stuff around and you had your little figurines that you would move around right? So you're essentially doing the same thing but you're doing it in the more like gender acceptable way. um,
Ah, that's
but
that's not very 2025 of you, Rook. That's it. That's unbelievable.
I do not endorse the quote unquote gender acceptable way. I'll say that. I
Um,
bring it up only because I think it's fascinating the way that you get these cultural divides that don't necessarily have to exist, right? Like I think the first action figures were created. I've heard this somewhere. I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that the first action figures for little boys were created because someone found their son playing with their daughter's Barbie, and they were like, "Well, we can't have that. We can't have little boys playing with Barbies. Boys need their own. We're not going to call them dolls. Action figures." We're going to make these GI Joe figurines so little boys can imagine themselves having fun with these little figures instead of they're not dolls.
wow.
and, ever since I found that out, I was like, oh,
I mean,
well, that says something about human society, doesn't it?
mm,
um, but what I think is really interesting, the reason I brought all this up was to say I think it's fascinating to get a look at what other people think is enthralling. And if you get the right presenter, you can take someone, you can sort of gain the appreciation that that person has for something that they love. And it enriches your experience of the world for experiencing it. And I think that's amazing.
how many times have you heard people say that? Take a random subject like history, right? During school,
Mm-hmm.
they'd be bored of tears of history, but then as an adult, they suddenly become extremely fascinated by history because they suddenly stumbled across somebody who's able to explain history in an engaging way, and that then
Mm-hmm.
sparks the interest in whatever particular thing it is. Or I'm really into that. I'll just scour YouTube, or now I've got 'cause I'm watching. To get jet lag 1 week earlier, I've subscribed to Nebula, and I want to take advantage of that and look at all those sort of documentary um, pieces on there. And even if it's a topic I know nothing
Mm-hmm.
about, I'm more likely to engage with it because I want to try and find out more things about just different cultures or different things I've got no prior knowledge of. And it's really cool when you stumble across
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's got not only the knowledge but also the passion to be able to convey all of that. It's
Yeah.
truly it's just enjoyable when you find somebody who enjoys something. They can convey that. It's uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's really neat,
Yeah. I completely agree.
even if the knowledge is not maintained. There's one I'm listening to again that might be quite interesting for, especially for you, especially from a more language perspective. Now I can't remember what his name is or the channel name, but somebody talking about the etymology of certain words and
Hmm.
English spellings and all this. And the one I first watched, because obviously from a science perspective, was how did all the chemical elements get their name, and talk about the
Ah,
different origins of those and things. But again, I have very I mean, I got no knowledge per se of etymologies and stuff. It is kind of useful for my job on occasion where I can suddenly say, oh yeah, the etymology comes from this because blah blah blah, right? And also then learning Spanish helps when you can show them something. Go, it's the same etymology, even though the word is slightly different and whatever. So it's uh, again, I might not have stumbled across that, and that's kind of the advantage as well with a lot of digital media. You can just scour and find something, whereas otherwise you might not have discovered those
right.
things.
And then, if you want to go deep on a topic, you can turn to physical media.
Well, precisely
This is
right.
something, yeah, this is something that I thought was really interesting. Was there's a YouTube channel that I think it's pretty well known these days, but I found it, years ago. They've since stopped uploading videos, but it was a YouTube channel called Every Frame a Painting, and they would analyze films. And for a long time, this was sort of the like my way of connecting with people who had a sort of expertise in a field that I didn't really know a lot about, but that I was interested in like gaining their experience for. Was I watched a lot of like film criticism YouTube, and Every Frame a Painting, loved those videos. So interesting and so well made, I think. And they're on a variety of different topics, but they made one video, and it was the last video they put up on their channel, and they were like, "This is going to be the last video we put up on our channel." And one of the things that they said was like some of the lessons that we've learned in making this YouTube channel, uh, and the like big takeaway that I got from that video. I don't. There were a lot of things that you probably could take away from it, but one thing that really stuck with me was the hosts were talking about how if you really want to get into something, like you have to go to like the physical record because there's just not enough on the internet that you can really go in depth on a topic. And so when they wanted to get all the details about a particular movie for an essay they were going to make on that specific film, right? They had to go and get like DVD commentaries or go through like books that people had written about a variety of topics that maybe the film shows up in like tangentially, right? They had to do actual physical research, and there's just a wealth of knowledge in books that does not exist on the internet.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's really like a crucial perspective. And so ever since I've been like, yeah, like I want to like if you really want to get to know a topic, you got to really drill down into it in that way. You can't rely on the internet to do it all for you. As handy as it is to be able to search for things, like I can't imagine trying to do my job and like all the references that get thrown around without the internet,
Mm.
like having to use like paper dictionaries to look up cultural references in Japan. It, what?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh,
Well,
it would be so hard.
that's how
It's
it
sort of
would have been done back in the day.
yeah, that's how people did it. I can't it's not impossible. They worked under those conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible to do my job before the internet, but let me tell you, it would have been a lot harder. Um, but for all the convenience that that has, right? There's no replacement for being able to like go and do the actual physical research.
There's one now. Now it's gonna really annoy me. I'm gonna have to try and find the video. I've just subscribed to that YouTube channel, by the way. Every Frame of Painting. So that's very. I also
Oh, I hope you like it.
while you're talking, I also googled Mighty Max. Haven't got a clue. So that's something that's maybe
Yeah.
was it
Okay.
across the pond or a different generational thing. But there's a YouTube channel called Kurzgesagt. It's the German expression for in a nutshell,
Hmm.
and they talk about science related things. And I can't remember now exactly what the topic was, but they had a topic, some sort of myth busting thing they did. There's a particular scientific, almost conventional wisdom, but they wanted to find out the source of it. And it turned into like this massive rabbit hole where every source they looked up on digital media, if I remember the video
Mm-hmm.
correctly, they couldn't find it. And
Mm-hmm.
they had to start ordering these really niche books and emailing the authors of books and saying, why was this written this way? What's the reference for it, please? And it was so hard trying to track down the
Mm.
The problem is now I'm looking through their video list and I can't find it. But it's probably one of these things. Now I'll go off camera. I'll then be able to find it. So I might have to
Oh
post
yeah,
it
you'll
in the
find it
comments.
instantly.
Find it
Yeah.
instantly. The problem is now I'm losing track of time of how long ago it was I saw the video. I think it was within the last year, but I don't believe. Maybe now it's not. Maybe it's much longer ago. I can't remember. Um, the other thing, talking about physical media, this is just a strange thing that, again, I'm interested in, partly because it's a nostalgia thing for me. But again, I have no interest in filmmaking per se and models and stuff. But it's just the thing, again, maybe this didn't make it, well, funny enough, when it was originally aired, it made it across to the States. But I think when I watched it during the reruns on British TV, I don't think the States saw it. Did you ever hear about the Super Mario Nation series of TV shows made by Jerry Anderson? So they're called Thunderbirds and Stingray and Captain Scarlet.
I have heard the term Super Mario Nation, and I have heard the title Thunderbirds, but I know nothing about them.
I mean, Thunderbirds was the most famous one, so that probably makes sense. That's the one that you would have heard of. There were shows that were made in the 60s, but they were basically they're puppet shows. But the creator of the show, it's kind of funny. He was trying to get TV deals initially to make live action stuff, and he couldn't get it. So his way around it was, well, if I could make really good TV shows with puppets, then I might be able to convince them that I could be trusted with live action actors. um,
Wow.
and that's what they basically did. They sort of pioneered this new way of thinking about puppets and making them as lifelike as possible and using electronic signals to make the mouthpieces move better in time with the audio dialogue and all this sort of thing. And obviously because it was like a science fiction based thing, there were explosions and spaceships and all this sort of thing. So me watching the first episode of Thunderbirds when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old when it came onto the first, there was lots of reruns that the British TV channel BBC would do. So it's the mid 2000s. Mid 2000s? No, that can't be right. No, early 2000s when they did their first rerun. I was just captivated. I thought it was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And the thing I'm watching now, they're deciding to put the old episodes up on YouTube again, so I am watching them just for pure nostalgia. But what they've actually done, there's a very good YouTube channel called Century 21. I think it's called Century 21 Films. I'm going to get that wrong. But what they're doing, they're going through a lot of the making of these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And what they've actually done is they've been sent in a lot of these people have found in their granddad's shed or whatever, the old film cans of the original film of
Oh
these
man.
episodes, and they're being donated in, and they're scanning them and digitalizing them. And the really cool thing is that, especially for Thunderbirds, this is something I didn't realize as a kid. The episodes are 50 minutes, but all the other series
Mm-hmm.
were only 25 minutes per episode. And what actually happened was during the making of them, they were made as 25-minute episodes, but then they were suddenly told, "Oh no, you have to double the length now." Because the TV deal got changed. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that, they had to then try and find ways of doubling the length of all of these episodes. And it's really funny how they took the original footage and then cut it all up, and then they had to create new
Mm-hmm.
footage. But then there were lots of inconsistencies, which as a kid you don't notice. But there are lots of what they called continuity errors in terms of how the equipment
Mm-hmm.
looked. Like microphones would start changing shape and all this sort of thing between 1964 footage and 1965 footage. It's very fascinating to watch the way that they are able to piece all of this information together. But again, because they're going to the source material, the only way they could know all this stuff is they found the old cans of these film reels and they can go through them and they can actually say, yep, this is what happened, more or less. There's still a lot of things they don't know because scripts are missing and whatever. But it's,
Yeah.
again, very neat. And going, as you said, you have to go to the source of the hard media. You won't find
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff on the net, which is, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Aye. The one question I did have, media related, before we
Mm-hmm.
finish, is I know obviously you said it before, you're an avid reader. Often we can tell by the comments that you're posting about the various Rebus novels that you're going
Yes.
through. But I am making the assumption that in between those little review posts that you put about the Ian Rankin novels or Rebus, that you're reading other stuff in between. How many books a year are you kind of going through on average, depending on work commitments and stuff?
Oh, I don't know. It's really not that many, certainly compared to what it used to be.
Hmm.
Um, I can calculate a minimum because I at least get through one audiobook and one physical book in a month. So that's at least 24 books in a year. And then I've got my Jane Austen project that I'm doing alongside that. And I mean, that's going slow, but that's because I have to read the source material and then also read the annotations. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe somewhere around 30 books in a year. It's really not that many, but
It's 30 more than me at this at this current moment. So my only obviously some of them are audiobooks, and that answers part of my question because obviously that's all digitalized. With the physical ones, just out of pure
mhm.
interest, what do you do with them? Do you have a collection of all the books you've read? As soon as you've read a book, unless it's one that you're very attached to and you want to keep, do you then give it away as secondhand? Do you buy secondhand books, or do you only buy brand new? How does that work?
So my book situation has been in flux for a little while, and it's sort of the last remaining remnant right now of my minimalist phase, where I went through a long time where I was collecting everything physically, and then uh, I came back from walking Japan, and I had this experience where I walked Japan, and literally everything I needed in my life was in a backpack on my back for 3 months, and I was like, I think it's kind of foolish of me to be hoarding all these things that I decidedly do not need and hardly ever use. And so I got rid of like all the stuff that I had been collecting as a kid. And so I had a ton of books and trading cards and uh, you know anime DVDs and video games and like all this stuff and on physical media. And I was like, it's all got to go. And I went and I got rid of all of it. And I've since regretted having taken that approach. But as part of that process, what I did was I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of all my books physically, and I'm going to um, get into ebooks because those I can just keep on an old iPad that I can't really use for anything else, but it works perfectly fine as an ebook reader. Not exactly like high demand on the computing power of that thing. So I've basically just got a digital library these days, and I've been debating changing it out and changing my system to where the thing is, right, if I read something and I really like it, I'll get a nice physical copy.
Right.
But um, lately I've just been sort of focused on the digital copies, and theoretically I own them. This is the thing, right, is a lot of these digital services I have discovered, if you think you own something digitally, there are a lot of ways in which companies have been signaling, we really don't think you do. We think we still own those things that you quote unquote bought, and we're going to change them on you. And so I've sort of been reconsidering lately. Maybe I need to sort of ramp up the things that I buy physically, and here's the other thing: is such a thing as a library where I could just be a member and read whatever books they have for free. And if they don't have them, they'll get them through an interlibrary loan, so they'll get them for me. And it's an amazing experience where I can sample all these books that I would want to read and won't have to pay for any of them. And if I really like them, I can buy a nice physical copy, just like I was doing with my ebooks.
Hmm.
And they've got a system in the US at least called Libby that allows people to um, digitally rent out library books. And I think you can even do audiobooks. And so I've been thinking for a long time I need to try out this system where just being part of my local library lets me rent out all these ebooks, because that seems like the perfect marriage. That seems like the best way for me to move forward with my reading habits and um and just the way that I've been engaging with media, because that's the best way for me to be able to experience all these different stories, and if I really connect with one I can buy it physically.
Right.
So that's sort of where I'm thinking of moving to. I haven't done it yet. I've been dragging my feet, not for any good reason, just because it's another thing to do and I have a lot to do. But one of these days, I want to make that transition and sort of move away from this thing where I'm buying ebooks and telling myself that I own them, but I probably don't.
I guess especially, I guess it depends on too if your life is in flux. I'm very cautious at the moment about buying lots of stuff because
Yeah.
space, a space, b money, but then also if you start moving, you got to shift all that stuff. I've already got stuff in Scotland that I have to try and rescue at some point. Um,
Yeah.
and again, I probably could just say, oh well, sod it. I'm not going to bother with that. I'll just get rid of my entire collection. But there's some stuff in there I really want to keep. So that's
Yep.
the issue. I
I
do
would,
get.
I would advise you to actually take that time and go through it. Having done the opposite thing where I was like, everything must go,
Mm,
I regretted that. Like, not every, there was some stuff that needed to go for sure. Like, I would, I actually, like, I didn't sell, I was talking about libraries. I donated a bunch of my books to the library, actually, now that I'm thinking of it. What I did when I was growing up, when I was collecting stuff physically, was, and this was, I had this system, right? Because I set myself this goal. I wanted to read 1,000 books by the time I got to fifth grade. And um, the way I measured my progress was I had a bookcase and I would like go through a shelf at a time, right? And I was like, this shelf has this many books, and then I would clean them all out, right? Except for the ones that I really liked, I'd move those to another shelf, and then I'd, put the next thing on the shelf, and that's how I would calculate how many books have I read, and that's why I say, 30 books a year, not that many, compared to
compared
when
to
I was a
that.
kid and I was trying to go through 1,000 books by fifth grade. Um, but I do think, right, you have to be selective about what you own physically, but I think it's worth doing if you really care about something. I think there's no replacement for having a physical copy. And that's something that I've just come to appreciate more the older I've gotten, where I've bought digital albums and Apple has decided that one of those tracks doesn't belong on there. And so I have to,
Hmm.
like, fortunately, I was able to then go in and, like, connect to my iPad manually because they couldn't like physically take it off my device. They just hid it from their directory. So I was then able to like reconnect it and manually go through and find the file in this like weird folder somewhere and drag it out and then like recreate. But I was like, I don't want to have to do that all the time. I could just buy a CD
Hmm.
if I care about this music. I want to have a hard copy. All this stuff that you think you quote unquote own, you don't really, if it's digital. So if you care about it, this is where I am now. If you really care about it, you should pick it up in some physical form. And yes, be wary because your life's in flux. Like I said, I lived out of a backpack for 3 months when I was walking Japan, so I know what that's like, right? So you have to account for that. But I think if you are thoughtful about what you own, you can usually find space for it, and it's good to have those things around.
And as I said before, just I think there's a little bit, there's something fulfilling, and you have pride in saying I've got this collection and I've built it up. But it's very personal to
Oh
you,
yeah.
right? Where then, even though you can create, talking about music again, you can make your own playlist on Spotify, but it's not the same. There's not the same aspect to it where you can just delete and create things at will, rather than over time you've built up something. Um, but then I think you can go maybe too much the other way. I see it mostly
Mm-hmm.
I see it with music, but I feel maybe people have done it over a longer period of time. I see it more with board gamers when I
Mm.
see all the shelfies, as they're called, that people share on the Board Game Geek social
Mm-hmm.
media, and people can do what they want with their disposable income. You can do whatever you want. If it makes you happy, I've got no issue with it. But I find it really
Right.
fascinating when people say, "Oh yeah, I've only been in the hobby for 6 months or whatever," and then they show their shelfie, and it's about 10 times bigger than mine. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
how are you not just overwhelmed with all this stuff? um,
Mm-hmm.
it just, yeah. Again, maybe if I lived in a world where I had so much more disposable income, then maybe I would be a little bit more tempted just to go nuts. But I just feel
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sort of torn between two extremes. So the closest thing I can relate to in this regard is fountain pens
Mm,
because I got into fountain pens, when I was living in Japan. I think it was probably somewhere around 2010, 2011, something like that. Um, I've been in Japan a couple of years, and I was like, I want to reconnect with the analog experience of writing. And I was also going through this phase where I had just started taking horseback riding lessons. And I wanted to do horseback riding lessons because my thinking was if I can learn this skill, I'll be sort of connecting in a way with the way that people lived their life and got around and did things for the vast majority of human history that only recently we moved away from, right? For the vast majority of human history, if you wanted to get somewhere, it involved moving on a horse or using a horse, right? So I was like, I think that's cool. I can experience those aspects of the past in my life now and have a deeper appreciation for, like, if I'm reading a book from, however many years ago, I can know, okay, this person, they're on horseback, and I have a sense for what that means, what that's like. And so I was following a sort of similar logic when I was like, I want to reteach myself cursive and connect with writing experience as it would have been, ages ago. Which ironically, fountain pens are somewhat modern, right? If you look at the history of writing instruments, mostly it's quills and pens, quill pens and ink. And eventually in like the 1800s, early 1900s, that's when you start seeing fountain pens, which have their own sort of self-contained reservoir. But that's still, in an older experience and a different experience with writing than I ever had before that I thought it would be interesting to experience for myself. So I got into it, and I bought myself, one nice sort of fountain pen starter thing and a book to teach myself cursive, and that was it for a long time. And then like a couple years, and then my dad got me as a present another fountain pen to sort of commemorate a trip that we just randomly happened to be. So we'd done this thing where I had gone back to my home in the States for 1 year for Christmas. They had come to visit me in Japan 1 year for Christmas, and we decided this year we're going to meet sort of in the middle. And so we both met in California as sort of this joint family trip that we went on, even though it was an excuse for us to get together. And we found this random shop that was called like Pens and Knives or something like that. And they had a collection of fountain pens, and they had a collection of knives. It was exactly what it said on the tin. And my dad wanted to get me a gift, and so he paid for this really nice fountain pen. It's called a Pilot Vanishing Point. And it's sort of I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later on, it's sort of a classic in the fountain pen community. And that was it. Like those were my two fountain pens for like a decade. And somewhat recently, like within the past 3 years, my friend got me, I've talked about this before, he got me a 5-year journal where you go through and it's like each page is a day and it's divided into 5 different sections. And so, you go to the January 1st day and you write entry number 1, and then you leave the other 4 things blank. And then you go to the January 2nd page and you write the first thing. So you have one little entry for the year going one way, and then you wrap all the way around, right? So year 2, you come back to January 1st and you write what goes in day number the following year, right? Year number 2, January 1st, and you can look and you can see just above it, 1 year ago, this is the entry that you wrote on January 1st. And that therefore got me engaging with writing instruments again, got me practicing my cursive again, got me using my fountain pens again, and I started to be like, well, this is really nice. What other fountain pens can I get? And my collection has since like ballooned up to like, I think I now have like 10, 15, somewhere between 10 and 15 pens. I don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, Rook,
and
you madman.
I know. And it's been, this period of expansion over the course of like 3 years. And it's just been like, okay, I've been getting these things. I've been getting them like comparatively slowly, but it's still like way faster than I ever had been before. And it's more than I need, right? If it's a question of like needs and usage, right? No, like the 2 fountain pens that I had for a decade would still get the job done. But I was like, I need to expand my collection. And of course, now I'm into more like fountain pen things. Like I'm into connecting with other people who are into fountain pens. So I'll go to the fountain pens Reddit. I'll go to the watch videos on YouTube about fountain pens. And as a result, like you just get exposed to so many more options and things about fountain pens, and it's like, well, now I got to get this, right? Like I can very easily see people just being like, well, I'm gonna buy, like, I want to get into fountain pens, I'm gonna buy 50 of them because I want this experience, this experience, this experience, this experience, right? And like you said, if they've got the money to spend, good for them, have fun with it.
Right.
For me, I feel like I need to slowly acquire these things relatively, appreciate them for what they are, and then think about my next move and then take that move deliberately. At the same time, I understand the emotional appeal of being like, that looks beautiful, I want it, right? There was one fountain pen. I think I shared some photos of it in the group chat where I had no intention of getting any more fountain pens, and they came out with this one that was like Dracula themed, and I was like, oh, I have to get that one, and I just bought it. So yeah,
it's the emotional and the rational are fighting each other.
absolutely, yep. And yeah, so I understand the sort of line that you have to walk with it when it comes to that sort of things, right? So I can understand the push pull of the people who get really into board gaming. And I think you got to try and find a balance, but I admit that it's a difficult thing to do.
Right. I guess if you've got the space and the income, then it makes sense that space is going to get filled quicker than
That's true.
It should be. But...
Yeah, I have a friend who's totally the sort of person you talked about with board games, right? Like he backed like hundreds of different board gaming projects on Kickstarter, and I think we may have talked about this guy in the board gaming episode where it was like he's just got this closet absolutely filled to the brim and overflowing with board games, and he's only played maybe 2 or 3 of them, and he had this project that he wanted to rope me into where it was like, we'll actually play these board games, and we got through one. But yeah.
Nice. Well, unless we got anything pressing, just because it's just over 2 hours, and I don't want to be the one taking in the scenery while tired and careening off the road or into any people on our trip tomorrow. I should probably, we should.
That's right. That's the sting operation for me, not you. Don't
exactly. Yeah.
Don't get your plot threads twisted here.
Maybe it's all been a double bluff all along. Maybe you're the one.
That's right. It's a double sting.
Me.
We've been setting each other up. We're both going to get arrested at the same time.
the only
They're going to take that dangerous material from your crotch.
Oh. The only other comment I've got just before we finish, completely different to media, just because you mentioned it. The word horseback riding.
Oh yeah. I mean, what difference in American and British English?
What other part of the horse could you possibly ride?
The side. The side.
Do you?
Oh yeah. That was a big thing in like the Civil War. They would ride the horses on the sides so that if they got shot at, they wouldn't present themselves as a target.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, I understand it's a difference between American English and British English, and logically, I agree with you. There's no need to say horseback riding. It's what we say. That's why I say the word in American English. If you think about it logically, it doesn't make sense. But also, I do happen to know historically people did ride sideways on horses for that reason, and I think that's also kind of cool. So I wanted to bring it up at the tail end here.
I see. Just because you mentioned it, that was another one that came up in the Discord reacting to that comedian's video about it.
Yeah, I saw that, and I also saw I also experienced that one because when I was doing horseback riding in Japan, I had this conversation where I was like, oh, people were like, what do you do on the weekends? I was like, oh, I go horseback riding. They were like, what? And there was another person who was also in the program at the same time who got me into it, and so I was like, yeah, you should check it out. And they were like, what other kind of riding is there? And I was like, do you not say that in British English? So I've had a personal conversation with some of the Brits in the office back in the day where it was like, what are you talking about, horseback riding? How else would you ride a horse?
Yeah, just clarification when clarification is not necessary.
Yep.
Yeah. I
think it's just about the flow. I think it's just about the flow of the words, right? Horseback riding, right? As opposed to horse riding? Sounds weird.
Horse riding. That
sounds weird.
Flows off the tongue. Oh well, there you go. That's
strange.
That is just that is the most common sentence in any language learning. Why is it correct? Because it sounds good. Why is it wrong? Because it sounds weird. That's it.
Oh yeah. That's it. And the beauty of it is you get different people with different senses of what sounds good and bad.
Right. Just because of what's normal. Exactly.
What they're used to.
hmm That could be a
At the
lead-in.
weekend. Every time you say it, I
Uh,
think that's wrong.
yeah. But then anytime you say on the weekend, again, that's one that my
That's
brain
right.
is adjusting to. But if a Brit says it, I'll be like, "Excuse me, what?
Mm-hmm.
That is not the preposition. That is not the
Mm-hmm.
preposition you should be using. Is it logical? No, because it's on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, blah blah blah. On the weekend is logical, but that's not the preposition.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Doesn't sound right.
That could be a lead-in
There's
topic
some other ones.
for.
Period versus full stop.
But that one I think
Um,
has a bit more of a, an isn't that? I thought it was a genuine, like again, just different vocabulary. But I think from investigating a bit more, isn't it period different? 'Cause I think there might be period also in British English, but I think it might be when it's a full stop in a different context. I think it's not as straightforward as being. It's just a direct synonym, or same word, but
okay.
I think there's a deeper
I don't know. I
thing
don't know
there.
that
I
one.
think
Yeah.
I'm
I don't know that one in detail. I've just heard about it. That's one of the ones that
yes,
I associate British versus American English differences. So that's why I was bringing it up.
right.
But if you know more about the etymology, then you're probably right.
I really hope I haven't dreamt this, but I do remember hearing something about that or reading about it that it's not precisely a direct synonym,
I
but
mean, the one thing that I can think of is it's sort of like telegrams when they used to give directions, where you'd indicate the end of a sentence by saying stop. But
okay.
I don't know if that actually has anything to do with it. I just have that in my head.
I guess the one way that we do use it as direct synonyms would be when you say it orally, when you want to make it clear to somebody, I've made my point. There's nothing more to add.
Yeah.
So you would say,
Hmm.
that's it, I'm finished, period. Like if you're annoyed with something,
Right.
right? Whereas we would say, that's it, no more, full stop. You
Right.
we would use it like that as a direct,
Hmm.
but I think there's a deeper meaning to those words. I need to look it up again because again, it's one of those things I probably would have watched a documentary about it and now I've forgotten it because I don't retain the information.
Yeah.
I think that leaves food for thought for another podcast. I'm sure we could do lots of UK versus US stuff in terms of language,
Absolutely.
and then rile up
Yeah.
people in the comments.
Hmm. We could throw in the Australian, right? What is it? How you going?
Oh,
Instead of how are you doing?
yeah. I think. Oh, how you? I can't remember. Is it how? Oh no, I've got an Australian friend now who's gonna tell me off if I get it wrong. Is it how you? Oh no. But how you doing is from Friends. I don't think it's that one. Is it how you going? I think it's how you going.
How you going? I think is the Australian one.
There's lots of
I could I
funny
could
things
be
from
wrong.
Australia.
This is just one of these things that rattles around in my brain, so I could be very wrong.
There's there's quite a lot of Australian
I'll tell you, the
expression.
Australian one that threw me for a loop was when I was working in this office in Japan, and one of the Jets who was there from Australia was like, "Yeah, I went to the store the other day and bought some broccoli," and I was like,
What?
"What did you say? Broccoli?
Wow.
Broccoli?"
I sure it wasn't a them thing. I sure that was a genuine Australian thing.
I don't know. I only know the one person. Well, maybe two people, but
Oh,
the other person wasn't there in the office to confirm. So, as far as I know,
I'm have
this
to,
was not a personal quirk. This was an Australian thing. Ask your Australian
I'm have
friend
to, I'm
if
have
they
to,
say broccoli.
I'm have to do a poll. I mean, I've noticed that Australians have a lot of overlap with British English. But
Hmm.
then there are also some other times where they just come out with the wackiest stuff, and even the British and the Americans will suddenly agree with each other, look at Australia, and go, "Really? Is that the word? Really? Is that the word you say?" It's crazy. So yeah, we can have there's so much potential there. Um,
Yep.
but I think that'll be for next time. I think. But
Yep.
enjoyable as always, Aruk. It's been
Oh yeah. This always a pleasure. And I hope that for you, those of you who are listening along, if you've made it this far, I hope it was a pleasure for you. Hope we were able to keep you company.
absolutely. And thank you everybody for listening. And I hope you've had a good June. Hopefully it's not been too hot wherever you are, and it's now calming down a wee bit. And yeah, we'll see you. I guess at the beginning of August, I suppose. And yeah, have a good July. and take care of yourselves. And thank you for listening. Feel free to leave any comments down below. We'll speak to you soon.
Yep. Bye.